It's probably just the quality of mic, mate. If you're just are you using the camera mic, is that what it is?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that'll be what it is then. Okay, all right, no worries. We can make do, mate. It's all right. We'll make do. I'll try.
Dude, I should have said about doing a tester before because I wasn't sure.
No worries.
This is a new setup. It's a lot better than the other one, I can tell you.
All right, mate. No problem. No worries. Are you all right just to crack on and get going?
Yeah, no worries, dude.
Right, lovely job. Right, folks, welcome back to Brew Time. I think this is 102, and we've got Alec Sharp back with us from English Electric. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Howdy. Not too bad. More importantly, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. It knocked me on my arse. I've got to say that around the UK ride knocked me on my arse for about
not surprised.
Almost a week.
I'm not surprised.
Almost a week. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, have you been, when you get jet lagged, that's what it was like. It's just like I had cotton wool in my head for about 5 days. Terrible.
Because the funny thing was, like, when we were, obviously I was kind of in the loop with the organisation of it. And then when I saw you when you came to pick the bike up, and we were chatting, and I'm like, yeah, good on you, Bruce. I mean, this is, that's epic what you're doing. But I mean, so obviously you've got dotted around the place where you're going to stay overnight and all that lot. and then you're like, no, I'm not stopping. It's non-stop. Like, oh, okay, you nutter. That's bonkers. And then I came inside and said to the lads, I was like, he's not stopping. He's just cracking on. And they're like, well, he's sleeping now. Like, no. He's doing it in one go.
Yeah, but I genuinely thought to myself, no, this will probably be physically. I was thinking it'll at least be on a par with, the big bike or the 125 I took, because I thought I'm going to be stopping so many times that I will have more sleep than I normally do. But it's when you push from that third into the fourth day, it's just a killer. Like 2 days, 48 hours you can go without much sleep. That's no bother. 3 and 4 was just like, even though I was taking a couple of like hour and a half. In fact, I think there's even a couple of 2-hour stops there. I was still just zombified.
I imagine, it depends on I guess, like how you sleep in general, in terms of, like, some people can get away with a power nap for an hour and then away they go again. But I don't know about you, but I feel bloody atrocious after if I just have a nap. It takes me another hour to get going again. You got to have a decent segment, which you were getting at very best an hour.
Yeah, probably best. Yeah. The thing is, I've had a couple of people actually comment on that and saying it was irresponsible and it was dangerous, and I understand that, and I think for the vast majority of people, yes, but since about the age of 17, in fact, on my 18th birthday, I started working on the doors. And since then, I've pretty much worked nights and shifts ever since then. And I've always got by with, I regularly got about hour and a half, 2 hours to 3 hours sleep every night. And I functioned on that. I was fine with that. And I've done it for decades. But now I'm out the old bill. I think I've definitely got used to sleep. So I found that harder than it normally is, for sure. Yeah.
For you to do that on any bike, like non-stop, the actual being awake for even, what did you do? Isn't the record for that thing 2 days? Is it?
Yeah. Normally you get 48 hours to do it. Mate, there's could you mute your computer, because there's all sorts of noises coming over the mic?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, hang on. Wait a second.
Sorry, folks. Otherwise, you're going to get the bing bongs and clicks and everything coming in all the time.
Bing bong, yeah.
It's weird. If you watch the vid, it's not too bad. But if you're listening via podcast, it's terrible. No.
Not great. Yeah. Okay. My bad. It's all right. I think it's done now. I think we're okay.
Right.
So 2 days.
Yeah. Normally, it's a 48-hour challenge. It's part of the Iron Butt, the UK Iron Butt sort of rides. It's called the Four Corners, I think. So from your start point, you've got to encompass Land's End, St David's, John O'Groats, and Nest Point, and then back to your start point. So it's whatever way you do it, it's roundabout anywhere between sort of 2,200, 2,500 miles, and you get 48 hours to do it. So,
to do it in, yeah. So I mean, 40. I should imagine, not having done that, but I should imagine 48 hours non-stop on a bike, in terms of being absolute, to be on it enough to be riding a bike to a reasonable level. You're going to be exhausted after doing that, whatever, right?
I think, again, most people will encompass some sort of overnight stop in that. So they'll stop and they will sleep. But okay. I don't. I just power nap it. But then again, it's like the Iron Butt 1,000 miler that they do. There is a set minimum time that they will allow. You could do the 1,000 mile in well under 24 hours. You could do it in about 15 hours, but you will be pegging it, like speeding. So they can't advocate dangerous riding effectively. So they say, I think it's 17 or 17 and a half hours is the quickest they'll let you do the Arbel 1,000 in. And there's a similar sort of time for the Four Corners one. But yeah, it is possible. It's not easy, but it's certainly possible on a, if you've got a reasonably sized petrol bike, you can do it in under 48 hours. As long as you're arsehole coke, you can do it.
Yeah. What was on? Speaking of comfort, what was the comfort level on the Ribelle overall? I'd be interested to know over that length of riding.
Do you know? I think it was like day 3, day 4. I started feeling it in my arse and my legs, but I think that's an unfair. Bearing in mind the fact that I'd done like over 1,000 miles, 1,500 miles probably by that point, 2 days solid riding before that really started to be an impact. I would suggest that makes it quite a comfortable bike, because there's plenty of petrol bikes that you can spend half an hour on, 40 minutes on, and you are in tatters. So, I've always found the Ribelle quite a comfortable bike to ride. Comfort's not been an issue for me on that one, to be honest.
Because when you said about doing it, I think because we proposed the SASA, didn't we? Which was their touring bike as such at that point, with a flatter seat, and because on the Ribelle, some people find it kind of like you sit in it rather than on it, and it kind of pushes you up against the tank a little bit. But I guess it's horses for courses. We rode the SAS recently, me and my partner, in Italy for about 1,000 kilometers down, like from Modena, from the factory from Energica all the way down to Naples. And we neither of us could, but I guess we don't ride a huge amount, sort of longer distance anyway. But we couldn't last any longer than about 2 hours in the saddle just before we had to get off and just have a respite.
But then, I often get a lot of people asking me this in comments and DMs and stuff, is, I want to do this trip of this amount of mileage, what bike do you think I should take? What's the most comfortable? How can I make it more comfortable? And my answer on that is always just spend more hours on the bike. Just spend more. You could take a leather armchair, but if you're not used to sitting on the leather armchair for a full day or 2 days, it's going to be uncomfortable after a set amount of time, isn't it? So it's like any sport. You've got to put the hours in the miles in and get your body used to it. So,
bed to sit in. Yeah.
Have you got a brew on the go, or are you on a softie tonight? What are you doing?
I've actually got what looks like a coffee bits of
whiskey. Good lad. So. Right. Well, I have a milkshake brew dog, so slange. Here's to your health.
Charles, what's that like? Any good?
I've had one on the podcast before. It's actually really nice. There's a very, very subtle aftertaste to it, but it's not like, you're not like drinking Hubba Bubba bubble gum here. It's quite nice. It's nice.
If it wasn't called milkshake, could you tell it was from milkshake?
No, not at all. I probably wouldn't notice a difference between like the normal drunk IPA one.
Yeah. Are you sponsored by Brewdog?
No. I genuinely reached out to them because the two lads are from near where I grew up, and we're similar ages. Okay. And I just thought it would be a really good little, a nice little fit, and it's be a bit of advertising for me as well. But no, they've never replied. Yeah. So, but I've got to thank Paul and Heather, because they dropped off two crates of Brewdog. Thank you very much. It's people that follow the channel. Thank you very much for that. Right, mate. I would love to just to have a free fall chat on here, but there are loads of questions and they're not digs. I said to people, please be constructive about it, because there was.
There's dicks out there.
It really, I don't know what it was like for you, but it really started to grip my shit when I was doing the ride and reading the comments from people. And I would say 80% of the comments, the overwhelming majority of comments, they're always negative on electric, and I understand that. But it was misinformed and ill-informed comments that people were making, like the infrastructure shit and you'll never find a charger. And if you followed it, there was chargers everywhere. There are chargers all over the country. That's one thing that has really struck home with me, is that, do you know what? There are chargers everywhere you can think of, apart from, you could probably name them, parts of West Wales, although since I've done it, people from there have said, well, you missed this one over here and there's one there and all this sort of stuff. But most places, you're within 20, 30 miles of some chargers. So that's not the issue.
Yeah.
It's are they available when you get there? Are there enough of them? Are they working? Yeah. And is there anything around it? That was probably the biggest thing for me. There's nowhere to get shelter. There's no toilets. There's nothing. It relies heavily on any social infrastructure that surrounds it, whether that's in the village, the town, that sort of stuff. But we can get to that.
Yeah.
How about, can we just start working our way through questions and just see where it takes us? Is that all right? Right,
yeah.
Lovely. Okay, so first off, folks, as usual, we'll go across to the clan over on Patreon, so patreon.com/TeapotOne. First one, Pete English. Pete, how you doing? We've not heard from you in a while, mate. Right, hi guys, hope you're both fitting well. First of all, I want to congratulate you both for making this happen. We've all talked about the potential restraints of touring on electric bikes for a long time now. By doing this trip, it's highlighted both the positive and negative parts. I'm not sure the statistics of commuters versus pleasure riders. If it's targeted at the commuter, then I think it's a very good option. But I'd strongly suggest that the pleasure rider has a huge slice of the market, and for someone like myself, who doesn't want to be stopping and waiting for long periods of time on what we consider our hobby, I don't see how, in its current state, electric can accommodate the pleasure rider. So my question is, who is the electric bike targeted at?
That's I think Pete follows us on. I think it's in the name on our.
Will do.
It's. I think it's it's nice that somebody like Pete, who can see pros and cons to it, not just the negatives.
Yeah.
And the fact is that the fact that that he understands maybe the fact that it was kind of it was a risk to us to allow something to happen. When you approached us with the idea. And we got some flack from it online and on our social media.
To interrupt here, mate, I didn't appreciate how much of a risk this was for you, and I wasn't aware of the degree of flack that you'd had till till after the event. So a massive thank you for coming on board.
But the thing is, it's an honour to be part of it, of what you did. You're the guy that put the miles and put the hours in, and I think I will answer his question. But to kind of what he was saying in terms of us being part of this, allowing this to happen, we knew we were going to put our very best kind of electric motorcycle in a position which would show it in the very worst light. If that was the case, we're putting in a position where you are going as fast as you possibly can go, getting from point A to point B without that is the worst position for an electric motorcycle.
Absolutely,
as he says, as a commuter, doodling around town and all that lot, it doesn't bring to light any of the real range restrictions or charging issues that you have. So in terms of the smaller end, that's where you see the huge growth in the market is the commuter, the sort of small urban-based
Definitely.
motorcycles. But because this Energica is aiming right at the other end of the market, right at the top end of it, we knew this was going to be it was going to show it in a light which we would get some flack for. But the fact is, for us, is that the fact that you could even do it now, the fact that there are enough charge points between charges to get all around the UK and to smash out, was it 2,500 miles?
Just under 2,300, yeah.
Oh yeah, in one hit with, okay, you had some failed charges and you had to wait to charge at some point, but to be able to do it, I think that's a huge leap forward for electric in general. So, but to answer this question in terms of like who electric is for, it isn't for everybody. I won't, I'm not expecting, I don't want everybody to jump on an electric motorcycle, because it just, the infrastructure, as you found out, will not cope with it, because you're going to have to be queuing up to charge. We're already having to queue up to charge in cars and bikes because the infrastructure isn't keeping up with demand. I'll happily say that. And for some people who, it's this whole thing about it's not suitable for touring. A lot of the flack that you got was, I can't tour on this. It's not suitable for touring. I mean, touring is one thing to one person, a completely different thing to another person. So touring can be, I don't know what the exact definition is, but I'm pretty sure people can do touring for where we are and go around the East Anglian coast, which is well within the range and charge time to do that within a day or so, or 2 days or 3 days, and they can charge, and they're not doing 2,300 miles as quickly as they can. Their day might consist of 300-400 miles, of which there's 2 or 3 charges, and they can do that over a period of whatever, a week or whatever, and that fits in with how they ride perfectly. So what I would say is that electric, electric has something to offer for everybody. I think it makes more sense right now for people from a commuting aspect. And certainly in urban environments, it's tougher to fit in with everybody's needs at the higher end, at certainly the touring end. But it depends on what you do. For a lot of people, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people out there with 20,000 plus GSs and all the other big tourer bikes that don't use it to its full capabilities, and an electric motorcycle would fit the bill. So and it can only get better. That's the other thing. It's only going to improve. The range is going to get better. The charging time is going to get better, and the infrastructure is going to get better. That's it.
I'm always amazed in the comments at the amount of people out there that go, until they have like a 200-mile range, or until I can do 600 miles in a day. And I'm like, wow, you must cover some serious distance, because there aren't many people out there that will do 400, 500, 600 miles in a day on a typical ride. Most people are like 100 to 200 miles when they go out for a day's ride. Some people aren't even 100 miles. In fact, I'd suggest the majority of people aren't even 100 miles. They're the Saturday or Sunday pleasure rider, and out they go. Yes, for sure. When you're talking about doing tours, there's all manner of restrictions there, isn't there? Like when you're out touring with your mates and you all rock up, well, even if you're the only one on an electric bike, you've got to go somewhere where there is a charger. They all have to sit and wait for you. So there's lots of restraints. Totally. I think you're totally right there. There is a definite place for it, and the commuter, it just makes sense, doesn't it? At the moment, it makes sense. I am concerned about the cost of electricity, and I just, the skeptic in me suggests that once the majority's moved across to electric, then the prices are only going to be going sky high, because they've got the market there, aren't they? So that will go.
Yeah, I mean, there's we've sort of done the figures, and even with electric doing what it's doing, it still works out cheaper than what it does combustion when you find all the maintenance aspect and all that. But you're right, the mass adoption of electric, the government's got to get their money back somehow, so they'll just start whacking taxes on stuff. But I like the idea of electric because it gives you as the individual far more freedom in terms of, your localized energy. So, production really. So solar, wind, I know that's expensive right now, but at least you've got the option there to look at. If you're tied in with combustion, unless you've got an at-home refinery, you're kind of screwed. So for me, there's more options with electric. And what you said was interesting about it's not for everybody. I think that's really important. It's really important it stays not for everybody, and it gradually becomes more and more viable for people, because if it was right for everybody and at the right price, there is no way there is the infrastructure to keep up with it. So in my personal opinion on this is that it's got to be a gradual thing, because
phased in.
Yeah, it has to, because the last thing you want, and we've told this to people, if somebody buys a bike and they expect they can just, because there's all these fast chargers everywhere, you just charge up. And as soon as they come to a charge point, which I'm pretty sure you did, and there's cars charging there already, or a queue of cars, you go, oh, well, bloody hell, all of a sudden, that's something you don't take into account. So, I think it's a gradual thing,
And it's a shift in mindset. I mean, traveling by electric just is inherently different to petrol or diesel. Like the convenience factor isn't there anymore. Well, it's swings and roundabouts, because you can charge up at home overnight, cheaper. You start the day with a full tank. However, once you're out and about, you can't just turn up, fill up your tank in Foxtrot Oscar. There's going to be some sort of time there, like minimum 15, 20 minutes, isn't there? So it is a sort of two-way street there. You do, if you're taking electric, you have to accept and embrace that change in mindset. So you have to
absolutely,
bring all these things in.
Which isn't for everybody now. Yeah.
No.
I one of the things that I maintain is that a standby is that if the bike, the bike you were riding around on was a £27,000 motorcycle, it's not for most people. It's not feasible for them to have that as a secondary bike to their combustion. Yeah. If that bike was half the cost, for a lot of people, because the ride is so good, there's a lot of benefits to riding electric in terms of the experience. I firmly believe as a secondary bike, if it was the right price, then it's a no-brainer for people, because it does a lot of things that people, that a combustion is a little bit more like the fact that you start every day off with, if you do stop in the evening to charge, you start every day off with a full charge. It doesn't boil you to bits when you're on a hot day and riding, it stays cool the entire time. It's, the cost of running, all these sorts of things. But as a bike that you only own, then it has to do kind of everything. It won't do it. But we've never wanted to ram that down anybody's throats that it would do. The last thing we want to do is sell a bike to somebody for someone to come back and go, this doesn't do.
Absolutely.
The charging. It's not like that.
Which is, it's why I'm going to blow smoke up your arse here. It's why I like working with you, Alec, is that you're not trying to ram electric down my throat or anyone else's throat. You're very open and honest about the limitations and what going electric means, and I like that. It's not like this is amazing, this is fantastic. There's no negative to this. You accept that, and in certain cases, almost embrace it and go, but you get this. It's a bit of a yin and yang.
Yeah. And the thing is, both you and I, we ride combustion bikes as well, don't we? So with and all the guys that I work with ride combustion bikes, but we ride electric on a regular basis. Whenever we have a conversation with people, and a lot of people immediately think we're like the devil incarnate here to take away their combustion bikes. But whoa. All we are here is to offer a viable alternative to what you're currently riding. It might not be for you right now. It might not be for you in the next 5 years. Have a go on it. Come back and tell us what you think. And 99% of the time, everybody comes back. They just go, "That was phenomenal," because you cannot dispute the ride. It's just it's how it fits in with your lifestyle, how you ride. So,
absolutely. Yeah. I've said it. I think in every electric review vid I've done, I think I've said this, that back in, was it 2018, you sent me an email about, hey, we got these electric bikes, do you want to take one out? And I was like, not really, don't think it's for me. And then, you said, I'll bring it to you, take it, see what you think. And I was just like, oh man, this is awesome. Shit. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, that was exactly the thing that happened. So we used to build custom stuff, like old and new. And my mate was like, do you want to come down and we'll have a go on one of these zeros or whatever. It was an early zero. And I was like, not really. No, don't really do anything to me. And so we went down there, had a go. And literally within the first 100 meters, I was like, wow, this is insane.
Yeah.
And why isn't anybody having? And that's how it all started off. So yeah, but and kudos to you as well for giving the time of the day just to see what it's all about and put them through their paces as well, because it's important, I think.
I think it's important to give everything an opportunity, and you've got to be as open and balanced. I think when you're someone like me who is like turned an influencer now, we've got to reach. We've got people that look and watch your content and listen to what you're saying. They might not believe it, they might not take it in 100%, but they listen to it. So I think you've got a responsibility to try and give people as balanced an opinion on something as you possibly can. If you say something's good, you've got to say why it's good. But conversely, if you say something shit, you've got to say why you think it's shit. And what's bad for me might not be bad for you or them. It's one of those things, isn't it?
Yeah, anyway, yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me for interrupting, folks, but it is sponsor shout-out time. And this month, we have a new sponsor. Welcome to Travel Escapes. Now, I've got some blurb to read out. Travel and Escape is an independent travel agent. They are ABTA and ATOL protected for your peace of mind. For hassle-free, tailor-made holidays from staycations, day experiences, cruises, luxury holidays, and so much more. You can find them all on the socials or book directly online using the link. Now, folks, I'll leave all their socials and a website link down below. Make sure you check that out. If you're watching a video, have a look at the vid description. If you're listening to the podcast, check out the show notes. There will be hyperlinks there. Make sure you give them a click, a follow, a like. And if you're looking for a little break for you and the loved one, you and the family, you and whoever, maybe just you yourself, make sure you check out Travel and Escape. We are also sponsored by Innov. Now, Innov have been a long-term sponsor for the main channel over on TeapotOne, but they're also helping out and sponsoring the podcast. So a massive thanks to them. Innov specialise in motorcycle dash cam systems. They do the front and rear dual camera K series. That's the K3 and the flagship K5. K3 is 1080 front and rear. K5 is 4K at the front, 1080 at the rear. The K5 also has much faster Wi-Fi. So both the K3 and K5 utilize a mobile app where you can view your footage, you can change settings, you can share on socials, you can have a look at your GPS overlay, all this sort of stuff. Both do the job if you just simply want a dash cam. If you ever get involved in an accident, the first thing your insurance is going to ask is there any CCTV? And obviously, if you have one of these systems fitted, then you can turn around and go, yes, I do. And if you head to innov.co.uk and use the code TEAPOT, you'll get 5% off of all Innov and Technologic cameras. So a massive thanks to Innov. And lastly for this one, we're also sponsored by Ultimate Add-ons. Now, Ultimate Add-ons, they make dustproof and shockproof mobile phone cases and action camera mounts. They will fit just about every single bike out there. Me personally, I always use the Helix strap mount because it means I can easily attach that to just about any bike that I'm riding at that time. I can jump on and off on bikes and just easily unscrew the strap, whack it on the next bike, tighten it all up, and off I go. It's very versatile. I've had no vibration issues affecting my camera using the Helix strap. That's the one that I will stand by and swear by. Been using it about 5 years now. So again, if you head to Ultimate Add-ons, so that's Ultimate with ADDONS, ultimateaddons.com. If you use the code TEAPOT110, so TEAPOTONE with the number 10, you'll get 10% off all Ultimate Add-ons. Okay, that'll do us for now. Let's get back to the podcast. Right, that's the first question. That's taken...
So we've done one question so far.
Half an hour. That's not bad. It's about 80 to get through.
Oh, no. Sorry.
Buckle up. Right, next one. Charlie Callard. Oh, sorry, Pete. Thank you very much for that, mate. Good to have you back. Charlie Callard. Evening all. Hope you're both fitting well. All good. Thank you, Charlie. So this series for me was an absolute banger. I'm becoming an electric convert due to vids like this, although I'll always have to have combustion engine. Electric really is starting to appeal. So my question, which is your favourite electric bike and also your favourite petrol-powered bike? Keep up the good work, gents. Cheers, Charlie. I'm chuffed to hear that you're becoming a bit of a convert. That's good. make sure you contact Alec. And
Yeah.
mind you, Charlie lives down in the southwest, like Plymouth way. So
Right, we deliver nationwide.
There you go, mate. You'll bring one to you. So, favourite electric bike?
Honestly, although Energica obviously is the tip top boy for me, but my favourite bike to ride is the Ubco.
Is it?
Have you had a go on that? Yeah.
No.
That's a little New Zealand made bike, which is 2-wheel drive, hub motor, front and back, that pulls and pushes you at the same time. It is absolutely awesome. You have to come, because you were shooting around last time. I've got to get you on one because it's only like 28 mile an hour, but it's the weirdest thing to ride because it kind of pulls and pushes you at the same time. But really, really, really simple, removable battery. It's got like 30, 40 miles range. It's like $5 or $6 grand, but it's like for me, it's like how simple it is and how good it does what it does, which is just go anywhere. So that's probably my favorite electric bike.
So what's that based at? Is that like an off-road plaything, or is that a commuter, or
like kind of like you know what? There's not you could really compare it to anything combustion. It's like it could be a commuter. It could be a delivery bike. It's kind of a utility bike. Like you can just chuck a load of stuff on it and just go anywhere. And then, like I say, the military use them a lot. The Environment Agency and all those guys. So they're in New Zealand and Australia. They use them like just to, I don't know, collect sheep or things like that. And
do whatever they do over there.
Whatever they do down that way, I don't know. But there's loads of space for animals everywhere. And I mean, I think it hasn't got it doesn't fit quite into one category, which I kind of like that. Kind of unique. Yeah.
Mate, I'll be up for taking one of them out for sure, definitely.
Yeah, honestly, you make a lot of bikes look very small, but this thing would be dwarfed by you. But it's because the motors, because they're hub motors and they're really, really pokey ones. Like we've had some big blokes on there, and it just doesn't. Yeah, it's not an issue at all. It just keeps
still does it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think for me, genuinely, out of all the electric bikes I've ridden so far, it's going to be the Xperia. It's going to be the new Energica. I think that I touched on it on the videos, and I'm sure there's going to be questions about it on here. But I think it would have been a slightly different story had I done the UK ride on the Xperia. There's more miles there. I just think it would have been a bit more favourable for people looking in. I think.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess you haven't had a massively long demo on one.
No.
Yet, have you?
No. I just took one out for about 4 or 5 hours, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still waiting for them to come in. They should be in by the end of the year. But yeah, I would at that level, probably the Xperia is my favourite. And we tried the Zero DSRX, which is, I don't know if you've seen that, been released recently.
Yes.
Zeros. Yeah, I mean that's I haven't ridden one yet. Nathan has, and he rates it. That's a really nice bike to ride as well. It hasn't got the fast charging, which is a bit disappointing because that's what we really wanted with that bike. But yeah, the Xperia is a lovely bike to ride. And considering it's the same weight as the bikes that you tried, I still can't get my head around how they've made it feel. I don't know about you, but I thought it felt a lot lighter than what the older bikes were, you know. Yeah,
it does. Like I said in my review that a lot of electric bikes feel like, they feel like big, heavy GSs or Goldwings because all that weight is so low down. They almost feel like a bit of a Weeble, whereby, they initially turn really easy, but if you really need to get around a corner, you've got to give a lot of counter steer to get that bike round. Whereas the Xperia just felt like a beautifully balanced, like I'm going to say it, a proper bike. It just felt lovely, really, really nice.
yeah. We had the same feedback from the guys that have ridden it and ridden, similar big bikes. It's a lovely bike. I mean, in terms of what you did, and with the 4 points challenge and this bike, it would be a better bike. It would have been a better bike to do it on. In terms of it's made to do stuff like that a bit better in terms of ride comfort, aerodynamics, all that side of things. In terms of overall range and charging, like I'd like to say that it would make a huge difference, but ultimately it's only 20% bigger. So I know you had worked out you were doing like 50 miles a charge.
Yes, roughly to try and keep that between 20 and 80%. I was roughly around about. I think the most I did was about 70 odd miles, and the least was about 40 odd, 45, something like that, just to make sure I hit the charging points along the way.
Yeah, I mean that's what the whole thought, the reasoning was why you were doing it like that. But the Xperia, I would expect reading exactly the same, to see anywhere from 10 to 20% additional range, which is great, but obviously it's not the kind of figures that I think a lot of people ideally looking for. But even a 10 or 20% jump is a quite a considerable leap, within a relatively short period of time, concerning the time Energica is about. They've jumped from 13 to 21, and now they're 22.5, but with a completely different setup, with the same sort of fast charging as well. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly a better laid out bike for that. That kind of, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay then. So, favorite petrol bike? Can you remember them? Stinky, loud, horrible things.
Yeah. What? My favorite petrol. I tell you what. I had. We used to do custom stuff. And we haven't actually, I don't know if the blokes will be listening to this, who we're still building the bike for after however many years, I don't know. But it was a Benelli 900 SEI, 6-cylinder, 900cc. And
6-cylinder, 900?
Yeah. And it was kind of like the CBX, but an Italian version of it. So it's just less reliable, basically. It was
Energica's Italian.
Oh shit! I hope they don't listen to this podcast. The completely different electromos, but they had the sound of it is just epic. It's one of the best sounding bikes I've ever heard. Riding it was a bit terrifying, but yeah, that was a pretty cool bike. I like so many bikes. I honestly couldn't put my finger on a single bike, but that's a cool bike. What about you?
I've never ridden a Benelli, but there's two bikes straight away jump out at me for favourite petrol bike. I think that my favourite overall, just to ride a bike, is the new Super Duke R. The Gen 3 Super Duke R, I just think is phenomenal riding machine. So it ticks every box, other than it's not as practical as the big GS that I've got. Otherwise, there'd be one in the garage. And the other one, believe it or not, is the Harley Fatboy. Love it. I love riding that bike. I knew
it. You've got the right look for it. I knew it.
I'm not that fussed about the look of the Fatboy, but riding it made my soul smile. I loved it. It was just like, this is what riding's all about. Loved it.
No,
awesome.
I meant your look on the bike. Yeah.
But I mean, but the actual look of the Fatboy, I could I could take it or leave it, to be honest. I like the big solid wheels, although I think they've changed that now in the new one. But I like that, the way the wheels are nice, big, chunky, big fat bike, isn't it? I like that.
Yeah.
But for me, it was not even the handling. It was just the way the bike makes you feel. And that's biking to me is, I don't care what it is. If it makes me smile, then I like the bike. So
exactly. Yeah. Actually, can I change my thing? I've just thought.
No, not anymore. Go on.
No, I've got it. So my favourite is because I've got it put on the wall and a stencil on the outside of the workshop. Is a Captain America from Easy Rider, the Harley Panhead. That's my favourite bike. That's the one. And very quick story, really quick, so I know we're going to sit. We dropped off a Suron, those little electric bikes in there? Yeah, we dropped one of them off to a customer of ours. I'm not going to say where it is because it'll get robbed or get stolen now. But there was, I dropped it off while the owner wasn't there, rolled it into the garage, all the garage lights were off, rolled it in. There was loads of cars, bikes and everything. And there was just enough light coming in and it illuminated the bike that I was parked next to. no word of the lie, actual Captain America's bike with Peter Fonda's autograph on the tank.
You're kidding me?
Yeah, this is not far away from us. So I rolled it in, and then it was the housekeeper let me in. I was like, is that the actual? She was like, it's the motorcycle. All right, okay, all right then. Okay, but that was.
Where was she from? Newcastle.
Yeah, that's my Newcastle accent. Yeah, but she was that was the one of the two. I think they actually used something. Okay, that was one of the two they used on the, because one got destroyed, I think, and then one they rebuilt or something like that, and they auctioned off finished. But that, I think, would be the bike that I'd want.
Oh wow,
completely impractical for the roads around here, but that would be the one.
My mate Mike at Guildford Harley, Mike Noble, he's got a couple of like original type Harleys, you know, the proper Charlies, custom built. Well, he's got his own custom Guildford Custom. You might have heard of them, I don't know, but they do custom Harleys.
Charlie Wars. No, Charlie Stock. Well,
no, Mike Noble's his name. I'm not sure who else it is that's in the custom company with him. But yeah, he's. I think it's his dad's actually. It was handed down from his dad, and it's lovely. It's proper choppers. I've never ridden any of those style Harleys. I'd like to. I'd like to try like the custom ones. I could see me getting into the Harley scene.
Just your tassels.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I love the idea of a chopper and the look of a chopper, and I know just because I used to work at a chopper shop how impractical they are. Yeah. But there is I've ridden some crazy stuff, and I just love them. There's still a place in my heart, as much as I love electric, for something as stupid as a chopper. But yeah, anyway.
Right, cheers for that, Charlie. Next one, Biker España. Chris, how you doing? Hi to you both, and congratulations firstly to Bruce for finishing the challenge, and also to Alec for getting involved. Not many would. Thank you, pal. Cheers. Question 1. There were over 10,000 electric two-wheelers registered in Spain between January and August of this year, with 70% being motorcycles and 30% scooters. How does this compare to the UK, and are some countries more accepting of the new technology? Okay, are you aware of those figures for the UK?
Yeah, absolutely not. Well, there is no way I'm saying any figures. But I know from we're part of the MCIA, which obviously the weekly statistics every month or so of what's being registered, and you've seen a huge leap in smaller capacity. I think it's up to like 4 kilowatts, something like that. A side electric motorcycle. I mean, they've just smashed it. I can't remember what the figure is. It was hundreds of % increase on an annual basis
in the UK.
And then it was 11 kilowatts, so like CBT compliant stuff. That was a notable up. But the bigger stuff is tougher. It's a tougher market. It's a smaller market. And so we're not seeing maybe quite. We were seeing an increase in it. So Zero is an example. I mean, we've been involved with Zero for a few years now, and they still are one of our core brands. But we have noticed a tail off, and I think that's a combination of we lost the government grant on anything bigger. That was the end of last year, so that's £1,500 more expensive those bikes were. Yeah. Cost of everything in general going up means that the bikes, the identical bikes that you were looking at last year to this year could be anywhere upwards of like 20% more expensive for the same bike, pretty much.
20%.
Yeah. I mean, once you compound all of the government loss with the increase in materials and everything else that was going on, so it's made it a lot tougher this year, certainly. At the bigger level, the bigger bike level, for sure. But in terms of like the smaller stuff, I can only see that kind of growing and growing as the government enforces tighter and tighter restrictions. That whether you agree with it or not, that's what's happening. And certainly I mean, I have to say I've got to like agree with like inner city, highly urbanized environments. Going electric makes a lot of sense in terms of
absolutely.
There was just as an example, I'm going off topic slightly, but we went to this plot when we went with the Energica. we went to the Amalfi coast. We rode down that bit, and that's amazing. And there's it's just like one tiny lane that you can't get hardly any. You can just about get one car down, let alone two. So they have to keep stopping you in this traffic jams because it's a beautiful place. And all it is just this, this beautiful location, beautiful weather, and all that lot. But there was just traffic jams everywhere. These cars stationary for hours, just pumping fumes out next to families and children and all that lot. And that, to me, in my mind, that's like a perfect place, like in most big cities, to have something which isn't chucking out fumes right in your face, the whole time, just because so that makes a lot of sense to me, and that's where we're seeing a continued kind of growth. But in the big stuff certainly slowed up. I don't know Spanish market. I think is it Spanish? Did you say?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
yeah. Spain, I believe, are pretty proactive, and I think the government might be pretty proactive in encouraging that, because I've got some friends about that way, and they've said they've seen a lot of, certainly the scooter-based stuff out that way, but yeah.
That'd be interesting. I've had quite a few people across Europe who've commented and DM'd me and things like that, and I think the overwhelming impression I've got is that they're going, wow, I didn't realize the UK was so pro-electric. I wish they were here, which suggested to me that they were insinuating their countries weren't as developed in electric. However,
I think if you're not in the countries,
if you're not in that scene, if you don't own electric and you're not out there looking for a charger, then you're not going to know that they're everywhere. No. I still was quite skeptical, although I've had electric bikes on review and stuff, and I've used the apps. And in the southeast, they're everywhere. They don't bloody work, but they're everywhere, And I just assumed that was because I was in the southeast, because the southeast gets chucked everything, doesn't it? But it's actually like that all across the UK. From what I saw, I was never that far away from a charger. And I wonder if maybe some of these people that are saying their countries don't have the infrastructure that we seem to in the UK, I'm wondering if maybe that's just because they're not riding or driving electric, so they're not aware of the infrastructure.
Yeah, they're not familiar with that. Yeah, no, I mean, like from the infrastructure. Yeah, you're right. So from the infrastructure side of things versus the actual kind of market. Yeah, the infrastructure side of things, the government backing that. Because obviously that was a downside from the government taking away the grants, so to stop encouraging people to buy. My guess is one of the reasons they did that was because it got to a point at which uptake was enough that they knew that maybe that the infrastructure wouldn't be able to cope. Maybe, I don't know. But the infrastructure-wise, I mean, they've just pumped another 200 million into 200 million. Oh no, there was an obscene figure pumped into some more infrastructure development and offering it to various different companies, and anything to do with EV really in the UK, like the company called GridServe, where you came up to do the launch. They should have another couple of £100 million chucked into them. So they should have 20. I think it's 27 fully electric forecourt scattered the entirety of the UK. But I think it's within the end of 2023. Wow. So I mean, that's pretty impressive.
It is, but again, as I found out, they're like 9 to 5 operation. Well, not 9 to 5. Yeah. They're like 6 till 9 at night operations, and it's like, like I got there in the early hours of the morning, and it's like, thankfully I only needed a pee, but if I maybe needed something else, there's nowhere to do it. So people will literally just go into a bush and do it. And it's like, is that the sort of environment that you want your customers to, it's like, why? I understand why the shops weren't open, but surely toilets, keep them open.
Yeah, funnily enough, that's something that we've actually forwarded on to them to take. So we've got quite a close relationship with them, being in Norwich and in Braintree. Yeah. So we're quite closely connected. So we have mentioned that. So I think there's certainly things that they can improve upon, at being a totally new forecourt provider as such, I guess.
It's an amazing looking setup. It's a very, very nice looking setup. And a lot of the service stations, sorry to keep interrupting you, but a lot of the motorway services, they seem to be in different phases of the country. Certainly sort of in the Midlands, and as you go north, I noticed it more. You get these, they would have a grid serve sign on the services, and when you got there, there'd sometimes there might only be 2, but other times you'd get there and there'd be like 10 or 20 banks of chargers that do DC, AC, all sorts, Tesla, everything. So, and then obviously that is there at the services. So you've got everything that the normal combustion engine services has. It's all there for you.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that sort of just takes time to develop that network of fast charging service stations. I mean, a really good example of another country's level of infrastructure is I'd never really had, other than speaking to some of our customers that had ridden, say, through Spain or France, which are quite developed in many respects to where we are. But then I'd never actually personally experienced them. But I said that we went with Italy from Modena all the way down to Naples. It's about 1,000 kilometres. And me and my partner on an Energica RS I with all the luggage and everything, and it's absolutely amazing riding. Like, I can't recommend it enough. It's just epic. And we just stuck with one manufacturer of charger called NLX, and because they were the newest charging providers, they just put their kind of refreshed their network. So they were a bit few and far between, but I knew they would work, which they did. Every single one worked. But the interesting thing was just little things which we've changed now, I believe, in the UK, is that when, say, at a charging point in the UK, if you stay on a charger beyond a certain point, I don't know whether it's 60 minutes, 90 minutes, something like that.
45 minutes at the moment, it seems to be, roughly. Is
it? Right, yeah. So they'll start penalising you if you don't either reset it or restart it or whatever. That makes sense, because what you end up happening, which is exactly what happened in Italy, we were desperate for a charge and pulled up to this place, and the little old Italian lady got out of an electric whatever, was trying to figure out where to plug it in, and plugged in a car, and away she went. Well, okay, we'll just sort of do our thing and then come back a bit. And we come back 2 hours later, still on charge, no sign of the lady, and there's nothing to stop her charging on there the entirety of the time. So by the time she got off of it, she'd been there for 6 hours. And gone to see her mates and gone to get some shopping, but there was no reason for her not to disconnect. So, which again, that's something I think in the UK most have cottoned on to. They need to suss that.
Yeah, Scotland's very hot on that. I did experience that up in the north of England. Actually, there's a couple of places I went to, and it shows you on the charger how long they've been there, and there's people over 2 hours, hour and a half. And it's just like, God's sake.
Exactly. Because the whole point of the fast charging network, in my opinion, is that it's something that you go to, you chuck something in. You don't need a full shot. I think that's the thing. That's a real thing people struggle getting their head around. Is that you should be stopping more often for shorter periods of time than one big long stop, which is effectively what you did, which is a lot of stopping, but in fact allowing other people on to charge whilst the infrastructure isn't quite there, which I'll freely admit is not there. That's quite important for the whole, kind of electric demographic to be able to use the network better.
It's that change of mindset, isn't it? It's that we discussed. It's just it's not the same as petrol, where when you fill up with petrol, generally you top the tank up, don't you? You fill the tank up and off you go again. With electric, you've got to try and keep it between that 20 and 80%, because it's the fastest. It's the fastest sort of recharge times you're going to get, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, and especially when you're the goal of what you were doing was, like I said, as fast as you can. From point A, point C. But if you're working within a far shorter distance, and you can stop at the end, obviously the fact that you can charge up at the end overnight, and then you're away again.
Absolutely.
It's a different sort of system, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, and people within the electric sort of sphere, those people who own electric bikes, not just electric cars, but people who actually own electric bikes, they did comment on that. They were like, this is an unfair sort of challenge to put an electric bike through, because this is not where it excels. And I'm like, I appreciate that, but the whole point of this was just to see, is it possible? And what's the infrastructure like? That was a big thing for me. Can I find somewhere to charge it? And you can. That's the big thing with me. Yeah, you can. You don't need to worry about that. Chris has a second question. Where do you see the industry in another 5 years? Will there be more small manufacturers, or will the established giants take over? Now, this is interesting because it's starting already, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, did you see the announcement from Honda by 2025? Yeah, they'll have 20 something bikes. No, 15 bikes, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, I guess to summarise it, I mean, within 3 years, you'll see, I think, most of the mainstream manufacturer have at least one offering, I would say, if not more. The level at which I think you'll see maybe people shy away from is potentially where Energica and say Zero sort of real big bikes, because that they're going to be very expensive bikes because of the size of the battery that you have to have a bike with that performance and range and everything. I think they're probably going to concentrate in the biggest market, which we've already said is most probably smaller stuff. So if you think about it, it's both Zero and Energica. Admittedly, they have some cheaper offerings, but I would say within 2 years, both of those brands, you won't get many bikes under 20 grand unless they've got something in development that fits in that category. So my feeling is the bigger boys on Hondas and all those guys will try and slot in somewhere, within the smaller segment, maybe all the way from delivery scooters up into 125s and maybe sort of smaller capacity commuters.
Which is quite interesting, because that's where Honda sort of started, wasn't it? Like, obviously they were garden equipment, but their first motorbikes were the little putt-putt C90s. Well, not even the C90 before that, wasn't it? It was the small little bike that the mass global populate could afford. And that basically got them going to where they are now. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
It's a huge market, isn't it? That market is so massive, and you've only got to look at it's just every week there's a new company, a startup, saying that they're going to bring out a new electric motorcycle that will, and also this blend of this kind of blurring between bicycles and electric motorbikes. There's this thing going on at the moment that's kind of odd too. You'll see it being embraced. I mean, the government's still got a 2030. Is it 2030, 2035?
I think it's 35 for bikes, isn't it? Yeah. So I think it was 35. No more petrol bikes, new petrol bikes after 35. I think it was.
Yeah. I mean that's although it doesn't seem to me like a long time away. I don't know, like part of the MCIA, like part of the group that they're pushing with all the manufacturers to talk to the government to try and push that back. And I think that's a good idea to give time for the infrastructure to mature, because that's crucial to it.
That's key.
The infrastructure, it is. If the infrastructure has matured and gets a lot better at maturing, then I don't see any reason why we can't hit that target. I'm not saying that we should. I'm an advert of I want to get rid of new combustion, but I mean my own opinion on it is in terms of certainly from if we can suss the energy production side of things out in a far more environmentally safe manner. Yeah, we're on better foot. We're on a lot better grounds to be running around on electric stuff than combustion. But I know you've got synthetic fuels, you've got hydrogen, you've got there's so much stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, the environmental stuff is something I want to discuss with you, and I'm sure I've seen. I tend not to pre-read the questions, but I've seen certainly I think it's on Instagram, at least one person has mentioned that, so it will come up at some point when we answer the questions. Okay, cheers for that, Chris. Next one, Mike Whiting, Mike Whiting. Hi guys, and well done, Bruce. You're crazy. Thanks very much, Mike. I recognise the bike used was not ideal due to its range. I also assume no manufacturer will be happy for this type of challenge to be done on their machine until ranges exceed 220 miles with luggage. Is this possible with current battery technology maintaining a usable size and weight? I assume not. I don't see where this 220 miles range, this magical 200 plus mile range comes from. I don't get it. I mean, on a petrol bike, I won't sit on a petrol bike and do 200 miles. You know, on my GS, I'll get 180 and then I need to fill it up. And even if I had a big GS adventure, my arse would be killing me well before I emptied the tank. So I don't see where this big 200-mile range is.
I know, I know what you mean. But again, it comes down to that. You know, you could build. Let's just say you could make a battery, you know, an electric motorcycle that had exactly the specs of the best combustion bike in terms of range, and it had exactly the same charge time as it would be to fill the tank up. I'm still adamant that would still get people going, no, I wouldn't. I think it goes beyond just the specs in many in a lot of elements. But I think in terms of having a battery, it would. So at the moment, with the current tech we have that's affordable enough for us to everybody to buy, is you know, there is a per watt hour per kilogram capacity, and that comes at a kilogram per, you know, dollars, whatever. You know, there's a cost behind that. So you can, and then that has a weight as well. And, you know, so the battery pack that you rode, I mean, that battery pack's the best part of 100 kilograms from memory. So out of a 260 kilogram bike. And that's getting you know, starting every 50 miles. Let's just say we double that. You're not going to get double the range because you're going to be adding another 100 kilograms. So the battery would be massive. So to get to that kind of range, it isn't feasible. My thing is that it's less about the range. I actually think with a little bit more range, probably Xperia level range, but we increase the charging. That's I think more impressive. If you did that journey and you were getting, you were stopping every 100 miles rather than 60, 70 miles, let's say, but you were charging in 5 minutes. That changes it a lot, maybe, I think. You know, in terms, certainly the time it takes to do that. So, but then what that means is you'll have to have a water-cooled pack, which then is a bigger pack. It's more weight. So you have to have a cooling system, like the cars. You know, the cars are able to take. So that bike is able to take 20. You wouldn't have seen 25. You probably saw 25 kilowatts at the very start, but then you were charging probably between 15 and 20 kilowatts. You were charging at.
Sometimes it was as low. I think the lowest I noticed it was 4 or 5, and the highest was about 17 and a half, I think. Because it would attract people that knew about electrics. You know, I remember having a conversation with a chap in Scotland who worked in the EV market, and he was over and looking all over the bike, and he was looking at what charging rate I was, and he was basically talking Latin to me. I had no idea what he was talking. He was like, "Oh, I expected these to have a much higher, charging rate than what they've got." Yeah.
Than what they've got, I mean, and it was interesting because your bike, or the trip that you did, put the bike in a position that we've never seen a bike put in, which is when I was messaging you.
By the battery.
Just keep an eye on it. There was never, that battery is passively cooled. There is no extra cooling on it, which a lot of the cars, almost all the cars, I believe, are actively cooled by coolant, and that keeps them cool even when they're charging. Whereas it's just passively cooled with air. So we didn't actually know what was going to happen. Were you going to get to a point because there was never a point at which the battery wasn't being either charged or discharged. It was all the time, pretty much, wasn't it?
It's constant. 39 fast DC charges. Yeah.
Exactly. So there was no time for it to kind of to cool down, which is why I think you weren't seeing the charge rate which you should do. But getting back onto the fast charging, so if you're charging at 25 kilowatts on that bike, well, cars can take up to 350 kilowatts. No, I think there are cars there that will take like 700 if you find the right charge. There's some insane levels of charging in Europe. I think they've played around with, but you have to have, that's like a cooled cooled plug. Sockets are using plug rather, and then a cooled battery system, which all is more weight and more, it's a more complex system. So for me, I think rather than pushing this, to get the range, is if you have that charging where you can plug it in 5-10 minutes and you actually have almost a full charge. That's a big thing, I think.
Huge. That's a game changer.
Yeah.
Game changer.
Yeah.
So why do you think, are they looking at that at the moment then? Or is that something they're not taking into account? And if not, why not? Like, as in electric manufacturers, motorcycle manufacturers, are they looking at this for development?
I don't know the ins and outs of the big businesses that we deal with, but from what I can gather from our experience over the last 5 years, the three elements of it is you've got the cost aspect of it, so it's getting it cheap. It's expensive, whatever, but it's getting it affordable enough for people to even entertain the idea of jumping on. So that's always in their, at the forefront of their mind when they're making something, I would imagine. The other thing is the warranty side of things that they can offer on the battery. So the lifespan of the battery, how long will it last for, and is their warranty going to cover it within the lifespan of that warranty concerning charge cycles. And then I guess the other thing is going to be actually there's those two things. Yeah, so price and charge cycles more than anything. So the thing is with a battery, a lot of those cells in the battery will be able to take a far faster charge and a far faster discharge than what you're currently allowed to do. The problem is that the amount of times you can do that before the battery falls below a capacity which is acceptable. So all the warranties we have on our batteries pretty much are guaranteed up to 80% state of charge. Yeah. So like I say, at the bike you rode, I think something like it's like 1,500 cycles.
1,200 cycles. I had a look today.
There you go. So 1,200 cycles. So you times that by your average, whatever, 1,700 miles. You're still talking like 100,000 miles.
But 100. I think somebody asked me today. That's why I know, because I had to work it out. Yeah. And I think if you're doing the sort of riding I was doing, where you're, I'm saying high speed, saying 70 mile an hour, sustained 70 mile an hour, and normal riding through towns, just normal riding that you would do, you're looking about 124,000-125,000 miles, and then your battery will, according to the Energica facts there, 1,200 cycles.
You'll be 80%.
You'll be 80%.
And if you're below 80%, then
but the flip side is, if you were to use that exact same bike in the city for commuting, where you're getting 220, 240 miles to a charge, as opposed to 60, 70, 80 miles that you would if you're just sat on the motorway rinsing it all the time, then all of a sudden I think it's like 300,000-400,000 miles that you'll be going to cover.
It's insane level. Yeah, absolutely. And the less fast charging you do, the longer the battery lasts as well, because you're stressing the battery out more. But the thing is that, and I don't know, and I'm looking into it more and more as we kind of go on, but I don't know enough detail about the cells themselves. But there is this thing so they're limiting how fast you can charge and discharge that battery, because they want it to be able to do this level of mileage before it falls below that capacity, or well within that. So is there the possibility of being able to charge far faster, but then reducing that overall lifespan of the battery? So I mean, even 120,000 miles, that's a lot of miles for most people. I mean, I would challenge many people to ever get to that mileage on a bike that they have.
It's a lot. It's a lot of miles for most people, but it's not a lot of miles for an engine. For a combustion engine. Yeah. Or is it? I mean, I'm always under the impression that an engine, as long as it's maintained, an engine will easily do a couple 100,000 miles. It'll get through there.
I mean, it depends what it is. I mean, my experience with engines is that, when you're talking tens of thousands of miles, there's more involved maintenance, certainly in terms of it could be like rings, rebores, there's a lot more to wear, all those sides of things. So, which there isn't so much on the electric side. But my point is that I wonder if I don't know, it's probably something that isn't feasible with the current cells they're using, but what if you go, actually, I'm happy having a 60,000 mile kind of limit on my battery before it falls 80%, but I get double the rate of charging. Yeah. And then, that sort of thing. Yeah. So, but then I'm almost certain that the cells are rated to a certain degree before them deciding just to go up in flames. So without active cooling. So I think the manufacturers are thinking, like, I think they know about it to a certain degree, that they're always pushing, fast charging and range and all that lot. But then the more they add into it, so the cooling and all that makes it more expensive. And I think there's always this gauge on, what people are actually looking for. Should they be building something that is directly replicating what the combustion can do, or would people be accepting of something that isn't quite, at that level, for a cheaper price? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff coming up, like Damon motorcycles. You know, those guys in Canada.
They look amazing, don't they?
Yeah, they look really cool. So I believe they've got an active cooling system for the battery. The Triumph TE1 prototype, that's got an active cooling system for the battery.
Interesting.
So there's all this stuff that's coming out that will be interesting to see how that changes the way, the way in which these bikes kind of operate. And it's, you think how long have you? We've been going 5 years, so you can only have been riding electric. Mid 2018, I think it was that you contacted me. Yeah. So even in 4 years, I mean, I think they've made a considerable leaps forward. So,
absolutely, yeah. Certainly, in terms of charging, it's leapt massively forward, because I remember even just the AC. I mean, AC takes longer anyway, but that first one I had was 8 to 12 hours on AC, whereas now you can do it. Is it an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes on AC that they'll do it? Is that right?
Yeah. On the zeros, you can do it in like an hour. On the zeros, you can.
On AC?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realise that was that quick on AC.
You need, in theory, you'd need a 3-phase supply to your building to be able to do that. But even on, like, a 7 kilowatt standard wall box charger, that would be doing it in like hour and a half. Yeah, hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that.
Right. Wow. Excuse me.
Sorry.
My whole office is going to stink of beer, because about 1 in 3 podcasts, I open a can of beer and it just explodes all over the carpet.
Yeah, my office stinks of whiskey, so.
It's interesting what you said there about the AC, because are you following Mark Travels? I think he's German. Apologies if you're not, Mark, but there's a European chap who's riding a Zero around the world as we speak, and he's currently in the UK. He was up in Scotland, and his is just AC. Oh, mate, I'll send you the link. Just go on YouTube and search Mark MARC Travels.
Yeah.
And he's riding around. I'm gutted, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. And he's riding an electric bike, and he's going to try and ride it around the world. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because his is just AC. It's a Zero, so it's just AC. And I was thinking, Jesus, how are you going to do that? It's going to take forever. But you seem to be charging really quite quick. That must be why then. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be. I get, because there's still loads of AC fast chargers. As long as you've got a 3-phase AC charger, then you can still charge it in like an hour and a bit, something like that. But what we're finding is, and it was one of the things that we wanted to see on the Zeros, and hopefully they'll bring them in on the DSRX, is CCS. But in America, they don't have nowhere near as much DC charging as what we have in Europe and the UK. So they're predominantly AC. So, but what we're seeing in the UK now, which I think is going to be a problem, like we just had in Skull, just up the road from us, they had a bank of chargers put in, and each post they have CHAdeMO, which you would say CHAdeMO, which is the Japanese fitment, DC charger, and they used to have a slow AC charger with just an open socket for you to put the plug in on the side. But they've ditched that now. And the reason, and I spoke to a load of, we deal with a load of charging companies. I was like, why is that? Because a lot of people are still on AC, Zeros on AC. And they said the problem is that anything on AC, pretty much they're mostly looking at cars. It's too slow a charging. They need to see a quick turnaround of people on the charge points. They don't want them hanging around, so they're not putting them in. So it's it is interesting. But I'll have to look. Mark's if you send me the link, I'll have a look. I will do.
Yeah, and he actually, Mark, if you're listening to this, because he's just watched the last episode of the UK trip, and he commented on it, because he won't mind me saying this. He he's much better suited to riding on electric because he's on all the back roads and he's taking his, he's not riding slow, but he's not sat at 70, 75 mile an hour on motorways the way my trip was. His is much better suited to electric because it's backcountry roads and he's on and off the throttle a lot more. So I think that his trip will definitely, never mind the fact he's going to try and get around the world and be in far off distant places. But in the UK, if you follow him, that will give you a much more, I would say, realistic and true to life perception of what life would be like riding an electric motorbike than mine, because as we've discussed, my trip wasn't what they're meant for.
But also, irrelevant of whether it's electric or combustion, what you did was exceptional.
It's an extreme ride,
yeah. That's the main thing,
Yeah, there's a lot of people wouldn't do it in 4 days on a petrol bike, but conversely, there's plenty of people that have done it in under 48 hours on a petrol. So it is an extreme ride. That's why it's a challenge, isn't it? Right, Mike, so that was the first one. Second part of his question. In my view, electric bikes are only good for short 100-mile max commute or the weekend cafe biker run. Probably 90% of the biker market is covered there. Would a true touring-capable electric machine ever be developed due to the high additional battery costs? I assume not until new cheap battery tech is invented. He's kind of hammered that. He's hit the nail on the head, hasn't he? In that electric bikes are meant for that commute or the shorter traditional bike ride. Back on off throttle, backcountry roads. They're fantastic fun. I said that on that trip when I was doing the riding through Wales through the night, and I was on these amazing biker roads, like A and B roads, well, predominantly B roads through Wales. It was so much fun. It was such a fantastic bike to ride on those roads. That's where they excel for sure. But touring, I think we kind of covered that, didn't we? Chatting about the battery side of things. It's going to be down to recharging.
I think so. I mean, I really good that it kind of touches on that question and a couple of other bits. Is that so? When shortly, either after you did or before, I think it's just before actually. I did this 1,000-kilometer jaunt through Italy. So on the same bike as you, but the SS, partner on the back, full pillion, everything bunged on it as well, and we had some kind of deadline where we needed to be, but it was kind of flexible. And I went Google Maps, and I went no toll roads, no motorways, so only back roads, and the roads are really crap there. The back roads, and thankfully the suspension is pretty reasonable on the Energicas. But this is not, hopefully, me as being a fairly honest person in terms of the kind of figures that we were seeing off the back of this ride, but we were getting worst case scenario, 250 kilometers to 300 kilometers. That's 150 to 200 miles. Every charge, no problem.
Wow.
That's 2 up, full luggage. And that's the thing, because we had like some of our dealers were going, this guy's riding around the thing, he's only doing 50 miles, and I've got people saying, and this is making it look really bad. When I said that you've got to understand what he's doing and how he's doing it. I said, in hindsight, look at what I'm doing now. I wasn't riding, purposely slow. I was riding as fast as I could on the roads that we were on. We probably were averaging 40, 50 mile an hour, because you couldn't ride any much faster than that because the roads were not beautiful roads, twisties, up mountains, down mountains, made use of the regen, like the engine braking, charging the battery back up again. And we were seeing no problem, 150 miles to 200 miles, charging up, in whatever it was, half an hour to 40 minutes. And then I think the whole 600, we worked out within 600 miles, but we did it over a period of 4 days, I think. So that's the nice thing, that there's no pressure.
Yeah.
We never felt like it was an issue. Admittedly, obviously, I had some experience with charging, so I had that benefit. But the whole trip cost us, in terms of fuel anyway, 30 quid for 600 miles.
You're kidding me?
No, 30 quid for 600 miles. So I wasn't bothered by that, as a lot of people won't be if they're going to buy, a 25 grand bike. Maybe they're not bothered by how much fuel. But for me, I went, wow, yeah, that is good, And it was an amazing experience on roads like that. So so my thing would be like, our bike's ready to do your touring. It just depends on what your touring is, if I'm honest with you.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe I should look at what the definition of touring is, but touring it for one person is very different for another.
I would genuinely, if I've not burnt my bridges totally within the electric community, I would genuinely like next to try a like for like normal tour that I would do on, you know, my GS or another petrol bike. Like, I don't know, go to the Picos and just take the bike, just go on a normal tour, or I don't know, ride to somewhere iconic, ride to the Nürburgring or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But do it the way I would do it on a petrol bike. So keep off motorways as much as I possibly can. And just see what it's like. Just see, like for like, what is it like? Because I've done the mad challenge on a time, which it's evident electric just isn't suited to that at the moment. So what's it going to be like for a normal tour? So it's not a time constraint. It's just, can you do that? I would like to try that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're absolutely not giving you another bike, that's for sure. But we'll get. I think we need to get you on the Xperia. We'll get you on the Xperia. You know, we've got a DSRX as well that we're coming into. So, but we'll get you on a bike, and I think, and that's what I was actually saying when everyone was going, oh, like, why did you give this guy a bike to do this on? And I'm going, just, it's okay. Try it. We've got, this is important that this provokes discussion. It's something that people are going to be interested to know what if they can do it. And it would look even worse on me if I went, no, I'm not prepared to put that bike.
You've got no faith in your product then, have you?
Well, exactly. The fact that you did 2,500 miles on our demo without any problems as a motorcycle itself, I think says a lot, to be honest.
Well,
but anyway,
I the first one of these I went to do for YouTube was on the brand new 1250 GS Adventure, and it got to St David's and broke down.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better.
There you go. I'm just putting that out there.
Well, for me, it was important to take up the challenge and to keep pushing things like this. And I think if we can, I was thinking, my response to the people that were unsure about the decision to do this was that I had in mind from kind of the outset, once I realised that you're doing it non-stop, which I didn't realise when you left, I was like, okay. But what we'll do is we'll get Bruce on something like the Xperia, and we'll go no toll roads, no main roads, and we'll let him do his thing. With no defined, I've got to be here by then, and just see how it is to use as he would like normally, you know. And I think that'll be a totally different experience. And I think that'll be really cool to see that in comparison to the extreme that you've done. You know,
yeah, I do. Yeah, definitely, because that is where it's meant to be. That's where the electric bike effectively should excel, isn't it? Other than me doing a Deliveroo thing in the city somewhere. You know?
We can do that as well. I'll get you on the Ubco. You'll be away then. You'll love that.
This is what I mean. Like, I could do something like that, but would you spend £28,000 on a bike and then just ride it around the city? You're not, are you? So those big value electric bikes, like the Xperia, the Ribelle RS, that sort of stuff, you need to use them where people are going to use them, which is going to be your A roads, your B roads, little trip away. Let's see. So definitely, absolutely. I'm up for that 100%. I am by no means. I'm not anti. I think you know that by now. I'm not anti-electric. I accept it's the future. I enjoy riding them.
You're honest. Yeah, you're honest. Yeah.
Right. Next one, Rebecca Christie. How you doing, Rebecca? Good evening, both. I thoroughly enjoyed these vids. Respect to you both for putting your heads above the parapet. Thank you very much. Until this series of vids, I was not a fan of electric bikes for a number of reasons. Namely, I hate the whine. I love touring, and they don't have that noise that I love from a combustion engine and a good exhaust. However, Bruce, you've seriously changed my mind. My questions are, is it the weight or size of the battery that limits the range? Well, we kind of covered that. Pardon me. It's what limits the actual range then? The physical range of the battery? Is that size?
Just it's the energy density of the battery. So you know, at the moment, like we mentioned, that on average, cell has a watt hour per kilogram. Worth of, and there's only so much you can fit in a given space, given weight.
And as you said, although at the moment for the current battery, say it's in the Energica, in case you didn't pick up on that before, Rebecca, when we were chatting, on the bike I took around the UK, that battery is about 100 kilograms, and that will get me, let's just say 80 miles, or on a full 0 to 100% charge, riding it the way I was riding it, you'd probably get 90 to 100 miles, wouldn't you? Roughly on that.
That's about right. Yeah,
so in order to get this mystical 200-mile range that everyone seems to want, it's not a question of just doubling the size of the battery. You'd probably be looking at trebling, quadrupling the size or more, wouldn't you? So basically it's weight at the moment, technology and weight. Second question, does the charge last longer in warmer conditions? I was in Finland in January and my camera and phone batteries kept dying due to the cold temperatures. If the bike batteries are affected in the same way, it limits where you can ride as an adventure tourer.
It will. I mean, anywhere up to 10%, decrease in overall range, because the battery will basically limit itself in those conditions to prevent any sort of long-term harm coming to the battery. From memory, ambient temperature where lithium-ion batteries work at their tip tops about 20 degrees ambient, something like that. From memory, that might be wrong, but I'm sure I read that somewhere. So anything above and below that, very incrementally, it will have an effect on the performance of the battery. But that is when the likes of, say, the cars are that much further ahead, and also you've got more space. If you have an active cooling system, it can also be an active heating system.
Yes.
So a lot of the cars will actively heat or cool the battery in preparation for discharge when you're using it or charging. So I believe, I don't own a Tesla, but I've got friends that have. If it knows you're going to stop at a charge point and you've been, say, absolutely thrashing the hell out of it, it will actively begin cooling the battery in readiness for the charge. And equally so, if it's very cold, it will heat itself up to get ready for the charge. And so we don't have any of that.
I wish. I know he's anti-bike, isn't he? He said he will never build an electric motorcycle because he lost a friend to a motorbike, didn't he? One of his, I've heard him, Elon Musk. I've heard him chatting on.
Elon Musk. Yeah. Okay.
I've heard him chatting on Joe Rogan, and I think Rogan asked him about motorbikes, and he was just like, I lost a friend on a motorbike, so I just want no involvement. I want no part of it. And you're just like, oh man, imagine a brain like that with his Jesus, scared the shit out of me. A brain like that with his resources.
Alfie.
I mean, imagine what you could create.
Yeah, I know. We had we've seen some concepts from. Can you take them out? Go on, bugger off. I've seen. That wasn't the child. That was the dog.
It's one of his workers.
Go on, bugger off. We had. Seen some concepts like Tesla concepts stuff. I don't think they were actually Tesla concepts. They were just, I think, something someone renders that other people have done. But I mean, they're always at the forefront of the kind of tech side of things. But irrelevant, the cars in general, relevant to Tesla, they're like 3 to 5 years ahead of where the motorcycles are right now. So it'd be really interesting to see in that time where we, what we'll have.
It was interesting. We chatted about this the last time you came on the podcast. Was that the actual physical shape and design of a motorbike is built around the mechanics of an internal combustion engine and everything that goes with that. So now that you get rid of that engine, that internal combustion engine, it's like a blank canvas again for an electric motorbike. And it's like, well, who's going to step away from the accepted norm of a motorbike, and what will it be? What? It's a blank canvas.
I'm stoked about the idea, to see where people take the design side of things. I think it could be really exciting. But I think we probably did speak about it. It's one of those things where just because there's the opportunity for someone to have a blank canvas and create something doesn't mean that it will sell. People are notoriously kind of stubborn in kind of moving into sort of really kind of crazy and new designs and stuff. They take some persuasion.
Yeah, I suppose you want it to be as close to a traditional motorbike as possible to get that transition, and then once you have people across onto electric, then you can maybe start pushing the boundaries.
There's some really, like with the car world, there's some, I think, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there's some designers, I think, that really do a good job of keeping like the core elements of what we know to be a car, but then they introduce totally new lines or elements. You go, wow, that's really, that shouldn't work, but it does work. I kind of like it, and that it's guys like that keep just pushing the boundaries, and it'll be cool to see where bikes head regarding that.
It's simple things like on the car, like if a manufacturer gets rid of the circular wheel and just has it like an airplane sort of handle, like a Formula One thing, or is it Tesla that just brought in the yoke? There is a car out there that just has a yoke, and there was uproar about it because it's not a steering wheel. What are you doing?
On a round steering wheel.
Yeah. Mate, how long have you got? Because that's an hour and a half so far.
Whenever you just tell me when you're done, we can be done.
Right, okay. Right, next one, bolt hole biker. Cheers to that, Rebecca. Next one, bolt hole biker. Hi, Bruce and Alec. Well done on the vids. They really help to illustrate where the EV infrastructure is in the UK at the moment, and also the current potential and limitations of electric motorcycles in particular. Thanks, man. I bought an Eva Ribelle earlier this year myself, partly because it looked awesome, had amazing performance specs, and partly because I wanted to experience the evolution from petrol to electric firsthand. As the Energicas were the first bikes that I was aware of that could support DC fast charging and had a relatively respectable range, they were the first electric bikes that I thought were really viable as an alternative to a petrol bike. As your vids have shown, although it is possible to do long journeys on them, they're not yet viable as long-range touring vehicles, largely due to the infrastructure more than the bike's range. But as a daily ride, my experience is that I don't have to treat it any differently to my petrol bike. Interesting. Day to day, we're almost at the question. Day to day, most of my rides are less than 100 miles, which I can easily get out of a full charge. And on the days when I'm going to ride further, I'd generally be having a comfort stop anyway. So I just do that at a spot with a DC charger, and I'm off again with an 80% charge, which is good for another 80 to 90 miles. That's that change of mindset that we were talking about. For journeys longer, I have to confess I'd take the petrol bike. My question, do you think the battery bikes will be the bikes of the future? Some of the big players, such as Kawasaki, are looking into alternatives such as hydrogen cells that don't have the weight, storage capacity, and charging time issues that batteries do. So, is it the final solution?
I think we probably spoke about this before, actually. I mean, my money's on the electric motor. That's where my money is. I had like 100%. Unless something far superior comes out, like a pulse ram jet, plasma drive, something or other, then I can't see how the electric motor isn't the most viable option for us to head down. Where my money isn't is in this energy storage, which currently is batteries. It might be hydrogen cells. It could be multiple different things that people are playing around with. I don't know where that's headed, but the limitations between for like mass uptake in electric and also just a development of pushing everything electric, I firmly believe is the issues with the batteries and energy storage. That's where a third of the cost of anything that you ride or drive is going into. You know, it's not the motor, it's not the controller, it's the battery. It's the thing that limits the overall range. It's the thing that limits the charging. It's the everything. So yeah. I mean, my money's on electric motor. It's not on the battery.
Me again, folks. Just a short one. We are also sponsored this month by the Influencer Store. If you go to TeapotOne.com, you'll go to the shop, check out any of the merchandise that I have available. That is all handled by the Influencer Store right here in the UK. I've got a quick bit of blurb to read out for them, and that is, The Influencer Store helps you build your brand big or small, providing you with a solution and apparel. We help you to increase your fan base while supporting you with starting your own influencer clothing line with nothing more than just an idea or design. And there are no hidden costs. For more info, come check us out at theinfluencerstore.co.uk or drop us an email at online@influencerstore.co.uk for more information. Make sure you check them out, folks. Head to TeapotOne.com, head to the shop, and you'll be supporting both the TeapotOne channel and the podcast right here if you buy anything from the merchandise. So a massive thanks in advance to you, and a huge thanks to the Influencer Store. And lastly, folks, I just want to say a massive thank you to you. Thank you very much for listening to the podcast, for watching the vids, for commenting, for liking, for sharing, for following and subscribing. It all is a massive, massive help. We're on a bit of an upturn at the moment. The podcast is gathering momentum. The channel is certainly doing really well. So a huge thanks to everybody who's been involved with that. If you want to go that extra mile, then you can always buy some merch over at TeapotOne.com. Or if you really want to get committed, you can join the clan over at patreon.com/TeapotOne. All links for everything are down below, folks. I appreciate any support in any form you can give. All right, then. That's enough with the beg and bowl. Let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah.
What about synthetic fuels? Because to me, synthetic fuels, to me, just seems to make sense, because if you can just put a synthetic fuel straight into a current existing internal combustion engine, then surely does that not make sense to do that?
Yeah, I think I need to do more reading on it, really, if I'm honest with you. So I hate, having a really solid opinion on something without having enough, kind of.
Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, same.
But my gut feeling on it, from what I have seen, is that it's something to drag out the longevity, to drag out the internal combustion engine. And the reason that I think it might well be something that we end up seeing quite regularly, synthetic fuels, is mostly because of this efficiency side of things. If I'm honest, I cannot get my head around somebody would favour, other than what they're used to being a combustion engine in terms of working on sound, all of the side of things they like about combustion by an engine. So put aside the emission side of things. Let's say that that fuel is zero emissions technically, and everything that comes out of that engine is all zero emissions. The fact is that whatever you put, your pound of fuel that you put in that engine, and the pound of fuel that you put in that motor, you're getting, you can chuck away 60 pence of that straight away out in a combustion engine, just because of its inefficiencies. Whereas I'm chucking probably less than a penny away out of that motor. Now, anybody who's got half a brain cell, to me,
really,
yeah. So it's like the most efficient engine that comes out of any factory, as far as I'm aware. Maybe you'll get some people comment on this and different. It's like at best 40% efficient at using at what it takes in to what it puts out. So that for me is, and it only gets worse, the efficiency of that. Whereas a motor has a far longer lifespan in theory, and is far more efficient from day one and remains so. So irrelevant of the fact of what you're putting in might be, net zero or whatever, and is environmentally friendly. Actual efficiency, it just doesn't make much sense to me. The eternal. This one thing I talk to people about. I said, if you had an alien come from outer space, lands, and goes, "Tell me about this combustion engine. Tell me about this." And we're like, "Yeah, well, I've had it for about 100 years. Hasn't really changed. Does the job, Okay, then that's great. So you just put this liquid inside, which you just explode, and these things all fly around inside, and then you get that thing. And then you've got this motor that's made of four core components, and we get electric can be generated by almost anything. You can get it from the sun, the wind, waves, whatever, and that is 99% efficient. And that's so why it would to somebody who didn't know those two things, I'm pretty sure you'd go, why are you still fanning around with that? When is clearly the route we should be headed in. I do believe there's probably a space for it in terms of a stopgap, because I don't think we should all move electric immediately, because it's not.
It won't work. Yeah.
So maybe synthetic fuels is this kind of step towards, or a phase out, maybe. I don't know. I mean, what's your opinion on it? What do you think?
Again, the same as you. Like, I like these podcasts because it's a chance for open discussion, and there's no hiding. You have to be honest about everything because it's been recorded, isn't it? But I'm the same as you in that I don't want to talk about anything that I'm not qualified in, and I don't know the facts and figures behind it. I'm sure there are people listening to this who are like, they've on both sides, on petrol and on internal combustion and on electric, going, yeah, but what about this? And what about that? I'm not equipped with those facts and figures or that experience, so I can't say. But like, as you were talking, my instant response was, if electric engines are so efficient, then why? And I know the answer is that, why did it cost me 50% of what it would have cost to do on petrol? Like, that whole trip cost me, the figures that I gave in the vid are actually out now, because I've since had a bill through from Charge Scotland for another 30 odd quid, which I think might be, there was one time I fell asleep. I think it's when I nearly died up north of Inverness, and I plugged it in and nearly froze to death. And I think I must have gone over that 45 minutes. And because I forgot my padded jacket, so I was wearing a t-shirt. It was ridiculous. God. Stupid idiot. But anyway, there was at least one time when I went over that 45 minutes, and I think that's just that, like, fine that you get. So yeah. It's a bit unfair to say, because I can't really. That's 30 odd quid that I would add on to what it cost, but that's my fault. So I think it cost me 267 quid in recharging fees to do 2,300 miles, and then the way I worked it out, for me on the GS, the equivalent thing on the GS would have cost me 416 quid just in fuel is what it would have cost. So if electric is so economic or efficient, why was that cost not significantly less? And I know the answer is because I charged up via fast DC chargers, which are convenient, and you pay for that convenience. Because people further down the chain, people need to make money, and they will make money, which again is a concern of mine with electric, in that everyone moves to them because it's so much cheaper. But then once you're there and they've got you, they'll just whack the prices up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen recently, there's been announcements that some charging networks have raised their prices to as high as £1 a kilowatt hour. Wow. Yeah. And now at that point, that's when people seriously start reconsidering.
Absolutely.
Electric is an option, because and understandably, like, I mean, you all of a sudden that is comparable, I believe, with
more or less
combustion vehicle. I mean, the argument we would come back with is that where it has always made sense, electric, is the fact that you're charging at home. For those guys that are charging at home and then they start, but out and about. It is becoming tricky. I mean, hopefully that we see, that fall, as with all the energy prices coming back down again at some point. But I mean, and in terms of what you're saying about the efficiency versus the cost, yes, it is the cost of the energy itself, which means that you don't see that huge difference in the efficiency of the platforms. You don't see it reflected in the cost. Is because of the price of the energy that you're charging with. But again, like, there is, for me anyway, there is this element of, I don't know, like, wastefulness. Like how wasteful people in society is. I certainly could be better concerning how my wastefulness and stuff. And as a society, I think we're pretty wasteful. And the idea of just, okay, irrelevant of the cost, you're bunging something in there and you're only getting 40% of what you're putting in there out, but it will do. Whereas I know I get 99% of what I put in there out. That's less wasteful ultimately, isn't it? You still have to make the energy. The energy still has to come from somewhere. There is a cost to, I don't know, us, the environment, or the world for that. And I don't know, it just seems to make a lot of sense to me, that setup. But it's a gradual, change, movement to that platform.
Yeah, definitely. Straight away in my head, I'm thinking, okay, but that electricity has to be generated, produced at some stage, although okay, it comes from renewable sources a lot of the time, but we still have to transfer that wind, solar, tidal energy. That still has to be transferred into electric, and there's going to be losses in that transformation phase. So is that still favorable in terms of the losses that they experience there compared to the losses that are seen in refinement of fossil fuels into some form of petroleum and then what you lose through the engine? Are they comparable? Is one better than the other? Are they not?
Yeah, that I couldn't comment on. I wouldn't want to. So, but what I do know is that the scope for energy production and like a more localized manner, like this whole thing of being self-sufficient, which I believe probably you're going to see more and more of as we have to, if energy prices keep going the way, maybe people do start, having to depend on themselves or
with their own solar or old wind. And what's wrong with that? I know I feel much more comfortable not having my pants, having my pants down by, when the energy companies decide to hike it up and then they keep it up for no apparent reason. And if you've got that localized energy production, and storage, more importantly, if you've got your vehicles able to utilize that, then you're not then held over a barrel when the combustion, the oil refinery or the petrol companies decide to whack the prices up because there's shipping's gone up, all this. Like I don't know. I think there's a far easier way to be like more self-sufficient and efficient on electric than there ever will be with a combustion, unless you have your own refinery. That would be my take on it anyway. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, totally get that. Right, cheers for that one, Botthole. Next one, Grant Laidlaw. Evening. Well done, Bruce. That trip really was interesting to see the reality of electric biking. Well, as we discussed, it's in a reality on one end. My first thought when I heard the plan was that you would run out of charge somewhere in a remote area in Scotland, mine too, as our infrastructure wouldn't be developed enough, but you certainly proved that's not the case. My questions are, do you see electric bike development as a stepping stone to a new and more sustainable fuel source in future, or do you think electric bike technology has a long-term future and will develop enough to offset the current environmental issues related to mining, manufacture, and recycling, disposal of the batteries currently being used? I think that first part we had touched on, but this part about mining, manufacturing, recycling and disposal of the batteries in particular, that's something which concerns me, and I know from a lot of comments that's things other people think about. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think like with we do quite a bit of research into the manufacturers that we deal with. We like to kind of know what their policies are on where they get, how the bikes are made and their commitment to being sustainable-ish anyway, certainly as much as any other big company would be. And it is quite difficult, certainly with batteries, because it just exploded, the whole battery thing, in terms of EVs, in terms of just everything, battery, energy storage. So I think it's like a bit of a cowboy market in terms of there's all sorts of dodgy stuff going on to get hold of the raw materials, and I'm sure it does go on. And I'm pretty sure it's difficult for even the big companies to say legitimately where all of their those materials come from.
Yeah, is it ethical?
Yeah, exactly. Ethical, sorry. So and obviously there's finite resources of those materials as well. So yeah, I mean, but then that's no different to where the combustion side of things. Them, buying up various bits of land and drilling, holes all over the place to extract oil, and at the detriment to the local environment and all that lot. But my thinking on it is that a lithium ion, or certainly the stage which you're at with batteries, is only a stepping stone towards something better anyway. As an example, there's already a manufacturer, I think, bringing out a battery next year, which will be a sodium air, I think, or something like that. It's something, basically, it's a different chemistry in the battery, of which is far easier to, well, one, very easy to recycle. There are some downsides to it in terms of its comparison in energy, I think, densities, other things with lithium ion, but it's a step away from being dependent on that specific chemistry. And I think you'll see that more and more come into play. I know that the battery recycling has improved massively in the 5 years that we've been in place. There was, at one point, there was almost no places that would take lithium ion batteries and recycle them. Now
Wow.
there is, and so there are dedicated places, and they are the percentage of what they can recycle out of a battery isn't as good as what I think we'd like to see, but it seems to be improving. So yeah, I mean, there is an environmental impact from the EV movement, or the battery movement. But I believe that it's certainly, people are understanding that it's unsustainable and that we need to be looking at other options, which seems to be happening.
Is this new battery technology you just spoke about, is that something China just announced? Because a lot of people have said, oh, what about this new battery China's just announced? And I wasn't aware of any new battery China's announced.
No, I don't know. Well, but it is a Chinese scooter that it is, so maybe it is. I think, is it sodium air, or is it something? I can't quite remember what chemistry it is, but I know, like, Elon Musk they were going on about a new battery that was going to be predominantly based around what's it called, sand, silica. So yeah, okay. So they're basically, they're going, we've got a fair bit of sand, I think, about the place. So they were basically going to use sand to be one of the core components of this battery. And
sorry, mate. Sorry to interrupt. Go on.
No, that was it.
What worries me about that, though, is that, back in the day, we turned around and said, there's oil in the ground, there's shitloads of it. Yeah, there's loads of this, we'll just use this. And water, there's loads of, well, now we're getting water shortages, we've got blooming petrol shortages. So if we're just using a natural element that can't, you can make sand, but it takes... it takes a little bit of time to generate it, and we're never going to be able to make it in the quantities that are needed to replace what is being used. So until we find a genuinely renewable energy source, sun, wind, whatever it is, but we can increase the efficiency of that to generate whatever the energy is. In my head, as I'm saying, it's in front of us. Nuclear. It's nuclear. Surely it's nuclear.
I mean, something, yes. I mean, like a contained, like limitless energy source. Like you see in sci-fi, things like fusion reactors or whatever, miniaturized, or that's something like that. But I mean, all of these, I just think we have to have a stepping stone at some point away from combustion. We have to move in a direction where okay, maybe we're still relying on the raw resources of the planet, but it might be that next step closer to something like exactly what you're saying, So yeah, I'm interested with you.
Yeah. So it comes back to what you said initially, is that it's a stepping stone. It's not the final solution. It's a stepping stone. And there's going to be, I think, certainly even over our lifetimes, there's going to be more of these stepping stones, isn't there? This isn't just going to be it. It's going to be, one thing to the next thing to the next thing. Yeah, for sure.
And it's one of that, like, there was I was talking to my grandma's like 80 something, and I saw her recently, and I was saying, would you have ever thought, when you're in your 20s, what we've got now, like in terms of phones, cars, electric, all these things, and she's like, you couldn't even begin to conceive the idea of what that might look like. You had sci-fi movies and all that lot, but you would never think you would be living with all of these things around you. And that's what I think, at least my partner thought, really, like, in another 60 years, this idea of this fusion reactor and, that is miniaturized, that powers everything, is that going to be something? Or, and the idea that, with the whole thing of electric not being a new thing. So we've got adverts, I've got some old posters in here of like the what's it called? The silent horse carriage or something like that. It's a Baker electric horseless carriage sort of thing. So, and the whole thing electric's been around for ages, but it's just been put on the back seat, and then all of a sudden it's made this come in. Is there something else that we've forgotten about that eventually takes the front seat again? It's I don't know.
How old are you, Alec?
34.
34. Right. Okay. So you're about, believe it or not, you're about 10 years younger than me. The reason I'm asking is because I remember the internet coming in. I remember 93, 94 when I started uni, and they told us about, you use this thing called Netscape and you need an email. And I was like, what's that? What is it? I genuinely remember that. Internet, what is that? And it was slow as fuck. It's nothing like what we have now. It was clunky. Nobody had it. So like the only reason you needed email was for uni to chat with tutors and other people on uni. There was no social media. There was mobile phones. Didn't have a mobile phone. I'm sure my age here. When my son was, when my son's mom was pregnant at the time, I got a pager. The little pagers that vibrated, because we didn't have mobiles. So I had a pager for when I was at uni and her waters broke. And just what you were saying there about with your elder relative. Well, I'm only going back 30 years, not even 30 years. We've advanced so much in that length of time already.
Everything that we're doing right now. It wasn't even was probably thought about, but it's so weird to think, and I think that's why that the idea that for me, taking it back to electric, is that I believe that in 60 years' time, electric will play a far greater part in all of our lives. But at that point, I might be that grumpy bloke that is trolling somebody, trialing out a nuclear mini fusion. This is crap. There's nowhere to refuel the uranium, and there's no range. So I hope I won't be that guy, but I can understand why people are like that. They feel threatened by something that they don't maybe know so well.
Yeah, it's human nature, isn't it? We don't do change. And especially as blokes, we don't do change, for sure. Grant's also got another part. Also, do you think we're likely to see a whole new host of electric bike companies entering the market and taking huge market shares away from the more traditional brands like Honda, Suzuki, etc.? We've touched on that, haven't we?
Yeah,
they're already.
They're doing stuff. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I kind of hope that we do see more like small brands come into the market and able to hang about, because it adds, some, I don't know, it just makes it a little bit more of an exciting environment rather than having 4 or 5 massive players that control the market. I don't know about you, maybe you think differently, but I like that there's, that there's that element of, we're at an era where, like maybe back in the day, which we're talking about, when everybody and his mate were chucking combustion bike engines in bicycles, and then you had a motorcycle manufacturer. I kind of, it's a bit of kind of the Wild West in terms of what you can buy some pretty interesting stuff. But then there's the guys that have got genuinely good ideas and are really enthusiastic and into the idea of making something new and fresh and exciting. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, because there's no way I would, Honda or Triumph or Kawasaki or KTM, they'd never entertain the idea of working with somebody as small as what we were, certainly, and are now to an extent. So yeah,
I see electric as almost like a blank canvas for the custom market. Yeah. I think, and what really set that home to me was the live wire. It was the Harley live wire. And I remember some of their marketing spiel or unofficial marketing spiel that I was privy to was that effectively the live wire is just a big battery and then everything else just bolted onto it. So you could totally customize that battery, like, and Harleys are all about individualism. They're all about customization. And I kind of think, well, is that not the case with all electric bikes? Was that the case with all bikes, petrol bikes or not? It's just, I don't know why, but in my head, I'm thinking the first sort of custom company out there that embraces electric and goes, we can do your fully customizable Zero, fully customizable Energica, whatever it is, really make your mark. Because at the moment, Zeros and Energicas, it's people with a bit of wonga behind them, innit? It's people who go out and buy your big adventure bikes. It's people with that sort of disposable income. And surely if you went to them, you can have a different... Anyone can go and buy that Energica, but we can give you a different one, Yeah. I just think for the electric market, for those bikes, there's a big gaping hole, which I haven't got the skills to fill.
Yeah. I mean, the technology is so simple in so many respects that it offers you, like you said, a blank canvas in terms from a design aspect, but also from like a customizing point of view. It opens up such an amazing opportunity for people to do their own thing. Or if you were a company offering to create something that was totally adaptable to a huge variety of different looks and different styles and different bits, different bobs. I think it's a no-brainer. Nobody's quite got there yet. We're talking with a few companies about the base doing similar things, but not quite like that. But
were you not a custom motorcycle company?
Oh, stop it. Back in the day we did some stuff. We did that quite a lot, which is kind of cool. And I do have a genuine interest in potentially doing something like that at some point. I'd really like to enter, to see what could be done. But yeah,
it is interesting. I think it is quite exciting. I've kind of got over that initial fear that I think everybody has about electric. I'm not scared about the prospect of us all moving to electric now, and I'm quite excited by it.
Which is good.
I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot of scope for lots of different aspects of it.
That's cool.
Right, next one, Harley. How's it, guys? All good, pal. Fantastic video series, Bruce. I personally don't see electric as the future for many reasons, but we will all be forced to switch. Alec, if you could manufacture your own bike with the experience you have, what would it take to be a good all-round electric bike?
Obviously, you're never going to make something for everybody in terms of it won't tick all the boxes for everybody. But I do believe that there is that electric can offer as like the only bike that some people would have, because it would tick a lot of boxes within their remit. And then as long as it was the right price, that's the really key thing. It would tick a lot of boxes for a secondary bike for a lot of people. That kind of brief there, like 11 kilowatt, so CBT compliant. So you only need to, because licensing is such a horrific thing that stops people from getting on motorcycles now. It's one of the biggest stumbling blocks that we see, proper licensing. So CBT compliant, 11 kilowatt electric bikes, which I can't remember whether you tried any of the 11 kilowatt stuff, but they're surprisingly punchy. We need to get you on one, actually. Next time you're down, we'll get you on 11 kilowatt, because that will completely change. These bikes are bikes you can be ridden with a CBT. So you could be, it's not so much if you're a 17-year-old and you've just got a CBT and you can ride a 125 equivalent, because you'd never get insurance on a bike quite like that. But if you were someone, anywhere in their 20s upwards that maybe had never ridden before, you don't want to commit over £1,000 to a full license, but £100.50 a day to do a CBT, I could do that. You can then jump on a bike that, our 11 kilowatt bikes here, the Zeros anyway. I mean, they'll compete with a 400 to 600 cc motorcycle in terms of acceleration. They're insane.
Really?
Yeah, they're awesome bikes to ride. But they get round. There's kind of a bit of a loophole in the way in which an electric motor is rated, and a very old legislation concerning the licensing. So well, I would make it kind of like 11 kilowatt. So a lot of people could ride it. Again, it'd be at the right price point. I think it'd probably need to have, really good fast charging, just so you can zip about the place and not be so concerned about range, which is what we spoke about already. I don't think the range is so crucial unless you're pushing yourself right at the upper end of the spectrum of, where Energica and Zero are. If you've got really decent fast charging, if you can stop for 5 minutes on a DC fast charger, that completely changes the game, even if you've only got a 50-mile range. That's kind of where I'd be headed, probably.
No, I brought this up the last time we chatted on the podcast, and it's about interchangeable batteries. And there was a reason why you said it's not likely to happen on the big bikes, but it seems to be more and more and more prevalent on these city commuter type bikes, the smaller, cheaper ones that are coming out now. All the new little bikes seem to have interchangeable batteries. Yeah. So why, to me, that just makes sense. But yeah. Why do you think we're not going to have that for the bigger bikes, the likes of the Ribelle, the Zeros, the big Zeros? Is it the size of the battery, actually? Because sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I just thought of it as I said it. It's 100 kilogram, isn't it?
Yeah. It's the size of basically. It's the size of the battery. And even if we move battery tech massively, you're just never going to see. Well, maybe you will at some point, but it's unlikely to see, a drop in weight versus the increase in battery capacity that to warrant that. So, but where you are right though, removable batteries make a lot of sense with hub motor driven, smaller. When we say hub motor like that UDCO, so you've got no drive line, there's no belt, there's no chain, there's no maintenance. That literally the wheel is the hub. The wheel is the motor. And so it's minimal maintenance. You have a battery controller, and you have the leads that connect them. That's about as simple as you get. Nice, low in cost, low in power, very easy to ride. Removable battery as well. So a lot of guys sort of inner city and all that live in flats. You can't get your bike to the charge point or your 3-pin socket. You take the battery out and then you go charge it up. But as soon as you start, and it's weird. We've been quite lucky to see these weird sort of bikes come in and out that have tried to be one or not the other. So we've tried a bike that was trying to push into like Zero segment with a massive hub motor, but with a fixed battery, and it was an awful bike to ride because the unspraying mass of the wheel motor, and this wheel was massive. The whole wheel of the motor is so great that when like the gyroscopic effect of it, when you try and go around the corner, it was trying to push you back upright again.
Oh yeah.
Just horrible. So there was limitations there, but then there's like more cost and maintenance involved in making a very small bike, say with a drive chain or a belt. So there's different recipes work for different kind of segments, I think. So it's not to say that the way forward is removable batteries, is because that's definitely the way forward for the more smaller, urban riding, but then it's not, I believe, the option for the bigger bikes that people are going, more range and faster charging on.
Yeah, basically because of battery technology, where we're currently at with our current line of thinking for battery construction, it's just not going to be, even if they halved the weight of a comparable battery, you're still looking at 50 kilograms, aren't you?
Exactly. That's a workout.
Of course, most people, I'd struggle with that. Most people are going to struggle to lift 50 kilograms.
I mean, I think with the biggest removable battery that we have was probably a Super Soaker TC Max. That's about 22 kg, and that's still a lump. That's still, and it's at a height where it's. But the interesting thing is that bikes like that, which have been designed specifically in mind to have that battery removable by the manufacturer, because they go, this is, our demographic will need to remove this battery, even though it's 20-something kilograms. That I would say 95% of every person that buys a TC Max, certainly through us, this might be a different figure for elsewhere, never removes them. The guy that will buy a battery to remove will buy a smaller scooter that is hub motor driven, and like I said, so there's like I say, a different recipe for different uses.
Well, it's interesting, that Right, cheers for that one, Harley. Next one, Smoky Gun. Hi, both. Great work with the latest vids, Bruce. I followed the progress of electric since the Long Way Boys did their Up series. I've still not watched that. Talk about emerging technology for the charging. My question, one thing that strikes me is that the future may well be electric. So would you say 3 bikes charge as fast from one outlet if they had custom leads connecting them? Sorry, let me read that again. The future may well be electric, so, and I'm no electrician, would say 3 bikes charge as fast from one outlet if they had custom leads connecting them. The reason I ask is people tour in groups of 5 or 6, so an all-electric recharge would take half the day in some places. Is this something that's being looked into or put to electricity providers? Now, that's interesting because that is something we found with Motorbike TV. Was that last year we did it? The 3 of us on electric bikes, pretty much a no-no. You know, that was in, where did we go again? It's a big city, fairly near-ish. It's up your way anyway. But they just installed a new electric hub that had, I think, 14 charging points, and we couldn't find any that would allow all 3 of us to charge. Like out of the 14, I think there was 1 that was available, and we had to do it one at a time. So we end up going to 3 or 4 different locations until eventually we found a DC charger. It had to be DC because we were on a time limit we had to be somewhere by the end of the day, basically. And as it was, we could only charge 2 of the 3 bikes at the same time. So we had to charge 2 and then wait and charge the other one up. Is this something that I know some of these charging, I should maybe just shut up and let you talk, actually.
Now you crack on. I've waffled on enough already.
It's just because I know there are some of these fast DC charging points, you know, they have a load of leads on there, and some of them you can charge 2 vehicles up at the same time. But it all depends on how much energy is available. So it'll depend on what the charging rate of one of the vehicles is. You know, if that's too high, then it won't charge up the other vehicle because it needs to have a set amount to give to, you know, at least one of the vehicles. So I mean, I don't.
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. Is that I don't, because it's a rarity. But when we have gone riding around in a electric motorcycle gang, but we've never, I've never had to charge more than 2 bikes at a time at one point, because the points which we see most commonly are one station, Chadmo, DC, and then usually there's AC on it as well. Yeah. So we can never charge 2 off of one thing. I've never actually seen, say, a car charging off of the Chadmo connection and a bike charging off of DC, where if that lowers the power on both. But we never see it on the Energica, which is the highest charging bike we have, just because 25 kilowatts is still quite low anyway in terms of its charge rate, if that makes sense. Because those charge points are 150 kilowatts, aren't they? Yes. It's unlikely the car's taking all of that anyway, so the bikes are usually going to be okay. But it is a valid point in terms of, so we went, Nathan and I went for my stag do, and we did a ride around I think I told you, didn't I? I went around Scotland to Aberlour and to That's
not what you told me about his stag do. It's something else.
Oh, didn't I? Oh, no.
I'm only kidding. Don't dig yourself a hole, mate. Don't dig yourself a hole.
I told him in strict confidence. And we ended up going to Aberlour. It's very whiskey oriented. So anyway, ended up at Aberlour, went to the loop round, a couple of mates of Combustion, we're on to Energicas, and it was phenomenal. It was some of the best riding that I've ever done, and the bikes performed they were amazing. What we struggled with, and there are, as you know, there are charge points in Scotland, and there are actually quite a few charge points where we were as well, but there was always one brand spanking new one, and there was one old one that'd been there for like 10 years, and we could never charge off of the old one, which we'd obviously, the idea was that we both roll up to at these charge points, both lock on because there's 2 charge points, and away we go. Never charge off that one. So what it meant was our 20-minute fast charge and then scoot on, then all of a sudden was 40 minutes because we had to double up. And if we had a third person, then we're an hour. So it is an issue when you're certainly out of the way, or, you know, you're the back and beyond, where you haven't got banks of chargers. my thinking is that you will just see more and more chargers get put into these places, assuming they have the power to to provide. But yeah, no, it is something that a problem that we've run into. I mean, and again, this comes back to the topic of I firmly believe that I don't want to be selling hundreds of motorcycles every year right now, because you're going to end up with groups of people riding around on electric together, and they will not be able to charge because there will not be the capacity for that. But hopefully that will change as things go on.
In the long term, it's basically going to have to be that every single car parking space has a charger.
I would say so. I mean, have you seen the inductive charging that they're playing around with?
No, what's that?
Oh, in fact, I have to send you this link. I saw an article on the Germans. There was the Germans. They came up with this idea that it was some kind of, they lay it, the concrete itself is something it can't be conductive. But anyway, it's concrete basically. As they lay the road, this charging system is laid with the road, and so the entire time the electric cars are driving, they're charging the entire time.
I have.
It's in it. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's like real life Skelectrics or PCR, whatever it was. Yeah,
I don't know what it's like if you've got a pacemaker and you lie on the road. That's it.
Yeah.
You're done. I don't know what, but there's like inductive charging, which that would be a form of anyway. So these guys were saying that all these car parking spaces you're parked in, you just like you put your mobile phone on
wireless charging,
the same thing. So that might be an option they head down. Yeah.
Does that not worry you though? Like in 20 years' time, are we all going to start developing growths all over us from all this stuff? You don't know, do you? But we don't know if Wi-Fi is going to do that, I suppose, do we? Because it's not been around long enough.
It's going to be one of those weird things that, in 40 years' time, and you're speaking with all these young kids, and they go, "I can't." It's the same thing as like commercial. Like, I can't believe you used to ride around with this highly flammable liquid sloshing between your feet.
But they'll be like, I can't believe you used to hold that against your head.
yeah. We have it in our head now. It's in our head. Yeah. But no, so the charging thing. I mean, that we've touched on it a few times. It's an issue. It can only get better. It will only get better. I don't think it should stop people from getting into electric. But I think it's just to understand there are limitations there still.
Yeah, I think for sure, don't worry about the infrastructure at the moment in terms of electric has its place. And if you utilize a car or a bike within that place, so your shorter distances, your towns, your commutes, your leisure ride, where you're not doing big mileage, sustained high speeds, etc., then electric's definitely the way to go. It just makes, at the moment, it makes sense for sure. So it's finding the right place, as you said, isn't it? It's not for everybody at the moment. Cheers for that, Smokey. Thank you, pal. Next one, Mark Fulcher. Oh, here we go. Let's see what he says. Hey, up my ducks. Apologies in advance. Oh, no, this doesn't bode well. But genuinely, why are electric motorcycles even a consideration? Poor performance with regard to distance versus the time, effort, money, and charging availability. The sheer influence that battery production and inevitably waste is more destructive to the environment than any other form of fuel energy has to be a consideration. Now, I'm just going to say this right now. I know Mark, and he works and is very clued up within the renewable energy field. That's all I'm going to say on that. Is this a consideration when being sold as a package to the consumer? Oh, sorry. The sheer influence that battery production inevitably waste is more destructive to the environment than any other form of fuel or energy has to be a consideration. Is this a consideration when being sold as a package to the consumer? The electric market seems to be a focus that is biased to the desires of a country that merely makes up 1% in total of the land mass of the world. Until other countries recognise that we need need non-combustible engines, why are we being forced to make significant, and may I add, non-efficient, costly, time-consuming and degrading changes that are impeding on us without any revoke? The electric market, in my opinion, and technical knowledge, is a farce and more in line with modern trends sanctioned by a government, here we go, who do not know their arsehole from their elbow. I recognise that there will inevitably be a change, but batteries for me are not the answer. Let's all just stick to what we know, to sound really old-fashioned, until a sustainable fuel source can be solved. He's an ex-pit lad, shiny side up. Okay, yeah. Mark used to work down the mines, but now specialises in renewable energy. Basically, he works in that field. So what was his point from it? Why are we being forced, as the UK, why are we being forced to go down the electric route when he suggests it's not ready for us? It's not environmentally friendly, it's not efficient, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think I'd actually, there's points there which I would agree with. There's I think there is. I can't say that I'm wholeheartedly behind this being forced into a position of having to go down that route. One because of the other other elements we've touched on in terms of just the infrastructure not being ready for it. And I think there's going to be a lot of disappointment for people if we all embrace it too quickly, and we are forced into it too quickly. But aside from that, on the point of why he doesn't believe in the idea of batteries being the future, like I already said, my money's not on the batteries, my money's on the motors. But we have to. It's a stepping stone. I've used that a lot, but I do believe that we have to be looking outside of combustion vehicles, engines, and looking at alternatives. And I believe that unless we're not pushed, but we invest enough time and money in seeing how much potential that system has, that we're never going to know. I think it's required for us to at least give it enough, give it enough of a go to see where we can take it. And I'd argue that when we started making the move from horse and cart or steam to combustion, it was incredibly wasteful in terms of the rate of development was so fast. I bet you there was within a year everything was outdated straight away, and there would have been. I'm sure that we just live in these cycles, don't we? So we're seeing what probably is an inefficiency in the way in which we produce batteries and how quickly we are developing them. But that's just part of the course that we have to go to get to something that's better than what our entire society is governed by, which is crude oil, basically, and
which is running out.
Yeah, which is running out, and
in our lifetime there won't be any left. So we have to find another source.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I didn't believe that it was there was some we were headed at least vaguely in the direction of improving the kind of the platforms the power that our vehicles, but I do agree with some of the stuff, and that's a really good example of how people can get quite passionate behind, whether that's from an environmental standpoint or whether it's just because, and I don't want, why are you taking away my, combustion, my bikes, and if I want to ride them, I will ride them. I don't want to finish it. And we're just going, whoa, just hang up a stick. Well, first and foremost, it'd be interesting actually if that guy had a go on an electric motorcycle, actually.
He hasn't yet. I do keep telling him to.
Yeah. I mean, aside from all the environmental, factors that he mentioned, just to have a go on one, which is what we always say, just brush that aside. We're think that's that's something that you don't enjoy. And without a shadow of a doubt, almost everybody that comes back is like, actually, that is really, really good. Maybe not for me right now, or maybe too expensive. I can still have fun on that,
I think what really interests me there with Mark's comment is the fact I know him personally and I know what he does for a living. And, he basically goes around the world dealing with turbines and things like that, wind turbines. Yeah. And I'm really sort of taken aback by his negative feelings towards it. So, Mark, if you're listening to it, mate, next time we meet up, I want to have a proper chat to hear your perspective from it, because I want to hear all different perspectives on all this, on electric. It's all well and good sitting down the pub chatting with somebody, and not like I'm saying we're sitting down the pub, but you know what I mean? Like, we can all sit and chat amongst ourselves without actual detailed working knowledge of the pros and the cons from every side. So it'd be interesting to sit with, chatting with you from the bike industry side, and you're living and you're breathing it with bikes. It'd be interesting to go and chat with somebody like Mark, who works at effectively the coalface of electrical production, and hear, okay, what are your feelings on this from your side, from the actual taking it from the air and turning that into electric, and what's the pros and the cons, and what needs to be improved, that sort of stuff. I'd be interested to get a really good balanced look at this, because electric's coming, whether we like it or not. That is, in our lifetimes, we're going electric. It's happening. Hopefully it's not going to be all of a sudden, like we've discussed. We need this to be some sort of controlled, phased introduction of electric. Otherwise the infrastructure just won't cope, and the pushback will be massive, won't it? So yes, it's happening, but we've got to figure it out. I don't know.
But I'd really like to, if you do end up going down the pub and it's not too far away, I'll come, because I'd be interested. That guys like that, it builds up my. I'll quite happily put my hands up if I I don't know about a particular subject, or I was incorrect about it. I've been told something that isn't correct, but from what I can, we speak with lots of people within the electric industry, not just from a vehicle standpoint, but from the energy standpoint as well. Like GridServe, that part of that company is there in solar. We've got people that we know in all elements of the kind of electric side of things, and you can see there's certain points which people I think all agree on, which a lot I think would agree with what that chap said. Even in the world which our living is EVs and batteries and stuff, there are things which we completely appreciate is the case.
Yeah, I think it's just going to have to be. We need to have a grown-up discussion about it, don't we? We need to take the passion and the feelings on all sides out of it, and just, okay, this is what is happening. How can we make this as advantageous to everybody as possible? Energy companies need to make money, and we, as the end user, we need something which is practical and actually works. Do you know what I mean? It's got to appeal to the end user, hasn't it? And I don't think we're that far from it at all at the moment. As you just said, if you could get that recharge to even 10 minutes, that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like a 10-minute recharge. Wow. Okay, last one of the Patreon questions. Sorry, man, this is 2.5 hours already.
Don't worry, honestly, it's Friday night, I'm not doing anything. I'm cool.
That's not something you want to shout about.
I'm 34 now. I don't have a life.
Welcome. 34, 10 years tomorrow. Tomorrow I was, I wasn't 34. I was 36. 10 years tomorrow, I left to do my world trip.
You were 36?
I was 36. Yeah. I was 36.
How long was that for? How long were you away for that?
442 days.
Oh, okay. Not too long.
Yeah. But what's that, a year and a half, something like that, roughly?
Oh, that makes me feel really. That's going to set my weekend off well.
You got 2 years. 2 years, then got to go do.
In your mid-30s, you're gallivanting around the world, and I'm in the office.
Yeah, you've only built like a now global business. Yeah, that's all.
Well, not quite, but
you're in Australia now, aren't you?
We are. Yeah, we've got a partner in Australia. Australian, very imaginatively called Australian Electric Motor Co. So
why is it called that?
Well, we couldn't think of anything else. So it was, So they're interestingly enough, they've got a big biking community out there because of the weather that they have. But they're like 5 years behind us in the whole EV movement. So it's really interesting. They are just going through all of the things we were going through when we first started. Which is kind of interesting. And the really nice thing is, out there, I stayed out there for a month or so helping them get set up, and I was sleeping in the workshop there, and the workshop's got solar panels all on the roof, and it was like I was lying on the sofa, and it was, I don't know, it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden this almighty roar started up, which go, whoa, like, what the hell was that? And it was went around the side, and this huge inverter, massive thing, was going flat out from like 5 in the morning till 8 at night, just pumping energy into the grid. And I said, I told the guy working there, I was like, why doesn't everyone have this? So you've got so much sunshine, you wouldn't have that. It's like, just doesn't happen. It's just there's not the incentives there. It's quite expensive with that. But if there were the incentives there, the amount of sunshine they get there, it wouldn't be, you could, I'm sure you wouldn't need much else,
It's funny you say that about Australia, because I get a lot of Australian bikers comment on any electric vid who are just like, love to have electric, but it just won't work out here. It's bad enough trying to get fuel in some of the places I go to, let alone electric. But since I did the UK ride, at least 2 Aussie bikers have been in touch and said, I've owned electric bikes for, the last few years. No problem. I can always find a charger. So I'm assuming they must be near, like, was that the East Coast where most of the big cities are? They must be Sydney, Brisbane, that sort of area.
Brisbane, all that lot, it's definitely getting a lot better. They got a new government in now, I think, that are pushing that agenda a lot. I think the guy that I was dealing with said the last prime minister there, one of the first things he did, I don't know, I can't remember what his name was he like brought a lump of coal in and put it in their government chambers in front of everyone. Was like, this is where our future lies, sort of thing. Everyone's going,
over my dead body, all that.
Yeah.
Right, last one of the patron questions. Ashley Wright. Hi to you both. First of all, fantastic series, Bruce. That didn't look easy, pal, so I take my hat off to you. Thank you very much, Ashley. This is such a polarizing subject. I'll be honest, I change my mind regularly on whether or not electric vehicles are the way forward for the masses. You've probably already covered a lot of this, but I'm hoping that battery technology will get better and more efficient so that motorbikes will have a longer range, which will make trips like yours more feasible. The one biggest issue I have with electric vehicles is the massive amounts of resources needed to mine, and produce the batteries. The amount of earth being moved and transported by heavy agriculture to mine a fraction of lithium that is needed to build the batteries is astonishing. The humanitarian problem in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the majority of the cobalt mines are located, is quite simply disgusting. China owns 14 of the 19 mines in the DRC, and we all know China's stance on human rights. Sorry to waffle on. The question is, do you think the deadline to stop selling petrol and diesel cars by 2030 and the deadline to stop selling petrol bikes by 2035 is actually achievable? Should the government put more resources into developing hydrogen fuel cells and convert the internal combustion engine? We've pretty much covered most of that, I think, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The humanitarian part of it is my biggest, at the moment, that is my biggest concern, in that he's hit that nail on the head. These minerals, the lithium and everything, to create the batteries, they've got to be dug out of the ground. And it's not big machines that are doing it. It's like 6-year-old kids in the DRC. So this is what I mean. I'm not saying it's fake news at all, because I know I've seen plenty of
news from that side of things. But then I also have seen these huge lithium mines I think they're somewhere in South America, and they are fully mechanized. They've got the same systems you'd see when they're digging out, gold or diamonds in these huge earth movers, and they're properly commercialized ventures. It's the same thing as when you've got those huge, properly commercialized, mechanized gold digging and diamond, what's it called? Rare gem, excavating, and then equally so down the road you've got a load of kids being forced to work through a load of stuff to hand dig out the rare minerals or and that lot. But then and also there is a element of with all of the oil side of things. I've never really thought about it before, but if it's coming out of like Kuwait and Saudi and all that, aren't they labelled as like one of the most repressive countries to their populations in the world? So I guess you could argue that oil money is equally being used to repress.
Yeah.
However many,
And at the moment, most of the gas we use in the UK, in fact, across Europe, comes from Russia at the moment. So,
Right.
I read a staggering fact or statistic. It was 40 odd days after the start of the Ukrainian war, and we'd just given, as in the West, Ukraine 40 billion, I think it was, or 42 billion in aid, in weapons. However, we were spending, what was it, 4 billion? I can't remember what it was. We were spending at that time over $1 billion a day we were giving to Russia for their gas. So, like, in the time, it was some staggering statistic, like the amount we'd paid Russia in the length of time in that 40 odd days for the conflict. It was something stupid, like 10 times the amount of aid we'd just given Ukraine. Not even aid, weapons we'd given Ukraine, who would have to, they've got to pay that back at the end of the day. You know what I mean? We're not giving it them out of the kindness of our heart. And we're still doing that now. We're still paying Russia over $1 billion a day. So it's like,
they had it just popped in my head actually about it is bad. You can't anybody with with an ounce of compassion would know that that's a terrible thing to be going on in the world, alongside all the other awful things. And obviously, if we try and look into the where the manufacturers that we bring in the batteries where they're made, but if I'm honest with you, it's very difficult to tell.
Of course,
but interestingly enough, I think they just signed off on a big lithium mine down in Cornwall. I'm sure I read that somewhere.
But again, it's like what we said though, right near the start of this. It's a finite resource. We're just robbing Peter to pay Paul, because at one stage, to get that lithium out, we're having to mine. So at the moment in South America, we're just losing rainforest, we're losing real estate, and when we do that in Cornwall, we're going to do the same. China has bought the rights to mine. Is it the moon or Mars where they've found?
I don't know.
Genuinely, really? They found. It's not lithium. I don't think it's lithium. They found one of the chemicals anyway, which is needed for battery production, and China has bought most of the rights for that. So obviously, we haven't got the technology to do it yet, but it's like they'll figure out a way. So then they'll start mining there.
How do you even do that?
I don't know.
I can buy the rights from just like a vague planet, I find.
I think if you've got like 3.5 billion people in your country, you might have a little bit of Wonga. You might have a wee bit of Wonga behind you. So pretty much do what you like.
But who are they paying for that? Who do they pay to do?
I don't know.
Are there people up there? Are there people?
Do you know that's a very obvious fact that I didn't even think of. How do you get the rights for something that you don't own or nobody owns in the first place? Pass.
Or does
no idea.
Someone own it? Yeah. No
Does it
idea.
exist? Who knows? Yeah. there was something that came up. I think I've just made my point. It was about robbing Peter to pay Paul. Yeah, with these mines and stuff, is whether it's little kids that are mining it or whether it's engines, we're still destroying natural resources to obtain something, which is no different to what we do for oil. So the source of these battery components, it's going to have to be, I don't know how you do it. It's going to have to be some new technology, isn't it? Which is man-made and infinitely recyclable.
Yeah, and it's longevity, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah.
But I guess what you would say is, we're draining all this oil out of the earth, but then it's used up so quickly. Comparative, I guess, to like the mineral, the materials that we mine for the batteries. You could argue hang around a lot longer, so we need less of it, maybe, I guess. But I know exactly what you mean. You are right, but like I said, I think we have to break our ties with crude oil at some point.
We have to, don't we?
Yeah.
I don't know what sort of timescales we're looking at now for crude oil, for petrol. I mean, I think it's within 50 years. Like we'll have none left.
I think it rings a bell. Yeah,
we're sort of certainly within our lifetimes, assuming that we live to the old 100 years. Right. Sorry, I was just having a quick look at the other socials there, just to see. I think most of the questions are over on Instagram. So you're all right if we tackle a couple of questions on Instagram?
Yeah.
I don't want to go above the 3 hours because that's just ridiculous. But we've got about 20 minutes.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. Right. Honestly.
Okay, mate. Right, folks. So thank you very much to everyone over in the clan. Folks, if you want to help support the channel and the podcast, please head to patreon.com/TeapotOne. Links down below. So we'll head across to Instagram, which is at TeapotOne Insta, and I'll leave Alec's socials for English Electric Motor Co. They'll all be down below as well. So first one, Ivan's Adventure Bike Fun. Bruce, I've watched your painful 96-hour journey on the electric bike and feel electric bikes are not ready in any shape or form for distance riding other than your local city commute. I think you spent more time worrying about charging and whether the next charging point was working than enjoying the reason we all ride motorcycles. Electric vehicles of any kind anywhere in the world is not the long-term solution. Battery technology is moving extremely slowly while the world moves faster and faster every day. There is a company in Australia, I think, that extracts CO2 from the air and makes carbon neutral fuel for all existing vehicles on the road, and not one of the world's governments have approached them to upscale and use this product that would instantly solve greenhouse gases. And he's given a little link to it as well, although that link is on TikTok, so yeah, we'll see. I'd have to watch it. Sorry, Ivan, I haven't watched that yet. I will have a look at it, but you were talking something about that, weren't you? About this new battery technology. Was that from CO2?
No, I think I cannot remember what the basis was. I know there was a silica-based one because that's what they were on about. Basically,
silica.
Sand, being sand, or sodium. Sand. I can't really remember. But there's his comment on the Australian whatever it is to make synthesized fuels. We've already kind of touched on in the respect that I believe that it might well be a good option to head down that route, but I still believe that's a kind of a stopgap between what we're currently doing and where we're headed.
Yeah, because of the inefficiencies. That's what we chatted about, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In that style of engine.
Yeah, and one of the things we didn't mention was the inefficiency of all the way from production to transport to storage.
Yeah.
Okay, probably the worst thing for, I guess, electricity side of things is storage. That is the worst thing, isn't it? They reckon in the UK we have like more than enough energy to go around everybody, but the problem is the peaks and troughs. It's having something, it's usage when everyone gets home at night and then it drops away. But if we can store energy when we're not using it, then we're away. But that's the problem. Actually, there's no suitable way. There's no cost-effective way of doing that.
It's easy, Alec. It's easy. It's just a big capacitor. That's all it is. It's easy.
Oh, all right. Someone's been doing their homework.
You've not thought about it.
You just have, wait a minute, capacitors. Are they that you can charge them up? Is it you charge up instantly and they dissipate instantly? Isn't that capacitor?
I haven't got a clue. I've got no idea. That's the only thing I vaguely remember from. I think either.
That was something, wasn't it? It was a capacitor hybrid battery. That was the other thing that they were looking into.
Oh no, I'm going back to my days in school, and it was either physics or technological studies. And I remember that's all I remember about the capacitor was that it would hold like charge power for a length of time. Because you get it in your strip lights, don't you? You know, in the strip lights that you have, that's a capacitor as well. Yeah. Well,
they had capacitors. They were talking about this hybrid capacitor battery, which basically, and there might even be some out there, I don't know. So the capacitors are really good at storing a lot of energy, I think, like very, very quickly and dissipating it very, very quickly. But beyond that, they're not very good. And I think they have a real high cycle rate in memory as well. I can't quite remember. But anyway, what they were saying was that they'd have this hybrid battery capacitor thing where when you wanted instant acceleration, it would use the storage in the capacitor, and then when the slower riding or drive was coming in, then that would revert onto the main battery itself, which would be a lot slower draw. But then for charging, you'd use the capacitor because it charges up really quickly. Something along those lines. I'm sure we're going to get loads of people comment and just go, well, that's not correct. That's wrong.
But even if it, you know, I think discussion like this amongst us, in the sense that, well, I'm like a total layman, and you excel in your market, but you're not totally au fait with the physics behind the electric side of things. I think it's important that normal people have discussions about this, just in case they think of something. There's a famous video clip when a reporter's chatting to Elon Musk about one of his space rockets, and I can't remember what they say. Yeah, and they go, well, surely you would just do this. And mid-conversation, Elon's like, we didn't think of that. That's what we need to do. And then literally it cuts to like a year, 2 years later, and he's done it and he's solved the problem. So it's important people chat about stuff and just, you know, have a few beers and think about stuff, isn't it? Yeah. Ivan, something I think is important to say here about what you're saying is that you're totally right. Electric bikes are not meant to do what I did. We've discussed this in length in the podcast, and I kind of thought I said that during the actual ride. Maybe I didn't emphasize that enough, but you know, that is not what electric bikes excel at, and it's not really what they're meant to do. I think in an ideal world they should be able to do it, but it's just not where we're at the moment. So it's kind of unfair to say that ride is a marker for where, you know, for what electric bikes, where they are at the moment, because it's, if you were to take that same bike and put it into town riding and country road riding, you would exponentially get more miles. You'd get way more miles. I mean, look at what Alec did. You know, he took it on a 1,000-kilometer tour of the Amalfi Coast and stuff with his missus on the back and luggage, and he's getting 200 odd. What was it, 200 miles or 200 kilometers you were getting? Yeah, so
150 miles.
Yeah, it's just the environment in which you put the electric bike. Right, okay, so next one, Wiz War. Hello all. Question, what both of you really think biker perspective what is possible to... I'm going to have to read this through, mate. Like, sometimes people don't put punctuation in. Perspective, what's possible to... Okay, so I think what you're saying here is... Sorry, apologies, Wiz War. I don't think English is your first language. Apologies here. My question, what do you think is the possibility of all brands arriving to an agreement to start and develop interchangeable batteries that we're able to change in seconds, a kind of petrol station battery swap? We've discussed that, haven't we? You're talking 100 at the moment, at current technology levels, you're looking at 100-kilogram battery for a bike that will give you 100 miles range. So it's just not feasible at the moment. Andy YRJ5, electric vehicles are only being thrown at us to cut down CO2 emissions in London. True or false? Because no matter which make or model of electric bike up until now, all any of them have been any good at is commuting in and out of London. That's a little bit unfair, Andy. I think maybe because if I could jump in here, I think a lot of the reasons you're seeing a lot of electric bike reviews in London is because English Electric Motor Company are pretty much, you are the biggest sort of distributor dealership for electric vehicles, and you deliver all around the place, don't you? And a lot of London is fairly commutable within range of you, isn't it? It's quite easy to get to.
Yeah.
And certainly for me, I used to review the bikes when I rode in and out of work, and I worked in central London. So I would ride in and ride back. And if I had time, I'd go for a ride somewhere. So maybe that's why. I don't know. But what do you think? I mean, electric bikes are pretty much ideally suited for commuting. So
yeah. I mean, we just did an Energica to a guy. So he does a 120-mile round trip, which is, what was your round trip every day? I can't remember.
80 mile.
80, yeah. So I mean, 120 miles. That's quite a commute, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Every day. So he does a 120-mile round trip every day. He has to have a little top up on DC for about 5-10 minutes, but that's the beauty of where DC comes in. If you only need to put in what you actually need to get, about the place. So he only just tops it up with DC, and he's able to do that every day. And I can't remember what the cost saving is, because 120 miles with his fuel bill was significant, and also the maintenance side of things. So we're going to use him as a really good benchmarker in terms of like on the maintenance side of things, how much he would have said. I can't remember what bike he was running beforehand, but yeah, that kind of usage, I think, is where the electric side of things excel. In terms of cost saving, especially when you're not charging on the fast charger, you're just charging at home.
I think the commuting side of things, as you were talking, I was just remembering back to the first electric bike I had off you guys. I think it was a Zero. And bearing in mind, my commute was it bang on 80 miles? Might have been 82 miles, to work and back. And I remember one of the rides I did, I was below zero. I was basically at zero. We have a big hill outside our village called Bluebell Hill. So you're talking about 2.5, 3 miles away is the top of that hill. And I freewheeled down. I remember hitting zero at the top, and I got home still on zero, but it was still powering along. And then you look at today, and Chops and I did the Pie and Mash ride on electric bikes. And one of the electric bikes, we charged one of them up. I can't remember which one it was, for a little bit of a charge, but the other one didn't. And that got us into London, all round London and back. And it still had something like 15% left. So, you can see the developments there for sure.
Absolutely.
Right. 86 Warriors. A frank discussion on the mining for minerals for the batteries internals that do more damage than riding an internal combustion engine will do. Sorry, no. A frank discussion on the mining for the minerals for the batteries internals do more damage than riding an internal combustion will ever do. I think he's basically saying chat about what we've already chatted about the actual the ethical side, the ethical and environmental side of producing these batteries. Well, yeah, we sort of covered that. There's no way around it at the moment, is there? With the current battery technology, there's no way around it.
Yeah, kind of, I guess it's like a lesser evil to some extent, but still not great.
Yeah. YT Tingewick, some of these usernames. Question for Alec and Bruce. If we assume all or most of the shortcomings of electric motorcycles can be overcome, the biggest being range and recharge time, vehicle cost, and longevity before major costs are incurred, do you think there will be a place for the number of manufacturers as there is now? One of the big differences between bikes within a genre is the engine and the feel it gives. Take a large adventure bike. They've got Boxers, V4s, V2s, triples, parallel twins, all with different character. If it's an electric motor, other than the torque mapping, what differentiates one from the other? Surely this means less diversity in the market. I'll jump in on this straight away, and if you don't mind, every electric bike I've ridden, they're all different. Like the Livewire is totally different to the Zero, and the Zero is totally different to the Energica. They've all got their own unique feel to them, just like different engines have a different feel. And within those electric bikes, they've got different modes. They've got different regen modes. So you can ride a triple, you can ride a big V-twin, you can ride an inline four just by altering the sort of engine mapping that's on it. So I would argue there's even more.
Yeah. I think you get a lot more variance within one bike in terms of the way in which you can ride it, from engine braking to the rider modes and all that lot. But you're bang on the money, and you're actually in a pretty good position to comment on that because you have tried quite a number of different bikes. So we've got, I'd agree that all the bikes have their own, little quirks, and the motors make different noises. They have different levels of kind of performance which are adjustable, but even like the levels, the parameters in which you can adjust them differ between the models. And I don't think that's actually something that I really appreciated until we started to get more brands coming in. I think I was in that kind of mindset. It's like an electric motorbike is an electric motorbike. It's a motor, it's a controller, it's a battery. What is the difference? But the more brands we get in with that setup, the more variance we see, and the more we ride the bikes, the more we see the different kind of nuances between them. Yeah.
It is interesting how they all feel differently, and I was really amazed at how different the Livewire felt. Weirdly, it felt like, I can't put my finger on it. It felt like a Harley, but you couldn't be any further from being a Harley. Like a Harley. I don't even like the new Harleys with this new big V-twin engine they've got. I like the Milwaukee 8 engine that they've got in it. The big thumping thing.
Yeah.
So jumping on in the electric one, I still don't understand why that bike felt like a Harley to me, because it's not got the thump, it's not got the soul, but it did. It felt like a Harley. I don't know why.
I've never ridden one, but I've sat on one where I've got a friend that's got one, and everyone I've spoken to said they're a really, really nice bike to ride. Really, really nice ride, performance, everything. It was just the cost was even more prohibitive, I think, than some of the bikes that we sell by all accounts.
Yeah. It's 30 odd grand, isn't it, for the Livewire? I think it's 33 grand. Gavin Fraser 39, he's basically just saying that he doesn't think electric is the answer, and he thinks it's either synthetic fuel or hydrogen. And what are our honest thoughts? We've covered that, I think, pretty exhaustively so far. Excuse me. SW Williams 30. Do you think the biggest limiting factor with electric vehicles in general is the infrastructure currently in place, or a combination of battery technology and infrastructure?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination. I mean, I guess if you were to ask me which one was at the top, I guess ultimately it would be the infrastructure, because I think that prevents kind of the if the infrastructure gets significantly better, it doesn't matter within reason, the range side of things and the charging side of things within reason. But the infrastructure, I think, is number one, and then followed by the battery range and charging, probably.
For me personally, I think it's the other way.
You reckon?
I think at the moment the infrastructure is just about coping with the levels we're at the moment, with the demand that we've got. So to make it better for me, never mind attracting more people in, but to make it a more attractive and appealing prospect for me to go and spend my money on an electric bike and own one, if I could recharge it in 10 minutes like we just discussed, I think that is a game changer. But then obviously once that happens, more people are going to buy it, and then the infrastructure will exponentially have to increase.
I think that's the problem. I think if you had the bike that did that type of charging, you'd get so much uptake, the infrastructure wouldn't be there. So it's chicken egg, isn't it? Totally. So I think it's almost the infrastructure needs to be there, and then followed by the bike. But I do see it from that side as well.
Yeah. Dude, it was 5 minutes before we're at 3 hours, and I've just had a quick look through the Instagram questions. They're pretty much repeating what we've already covered. So are you all right if we just jump across onto Facebook? Because I think there's There's a load of comments on Facebook, but I think a lot of them they're not really questions. It's just people going, interesting to hear what this is going to be, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much to everyone on Instagram that left a question there. I'll pop across to Facebook. So it's just facebook.com/TeapotOne. Again, I'll leave Alec's links down below. Let me have a quick read through here, see where we've got some questions. Someone's saying, Tommy Slingshot, I've only seen 2 so far. Is there a third vid? Yes, mate, it's just gone. It went live about 3-4 o'clock this afternoon. All over on YouTube. Ian Allen, watch the first 2, and to be honest, I don't think we're ready for electric bikes. Just not enough range, too few charging points, and a tad expensive to buy. Top videos, though. Thoroughly enjoying all your trips and reviews. Cheers, Alan. Hopefully, we've sort of addressed a lot of that in this chat, because I think the infrastructure's there, but they're definitely expensive. Actually, that's something we could have a quick chat about, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we haven't spoken about cost. Yeah.
I think we've discussed this before. I can't see the cost ever coming down on electric bikes. I just don't see that happening. It's going to be more a way of making them affordable for people to own.
Correct. Yeah.
Through some sort of like financey type scheme.
Yeah, I mean, like I think we've spoken about it before. I think it's 80% of the electric car market is leased. There's only a small percentage of people that have the kind of cash they need to lay down on an electric car, and the issue is that we don't, the people buy a motorcycle aside from commuting for a different reason. They buy a car. Cars are tools in many respects, whereas a motorcycle is more of a heart purchase. Because of that, I think people like the idea of owning the bike versus leasing. Unfortunately, I think that will have to change if we're trying to get any kind of, if we're trying to introduce more people into certainly the higher end stuff, because the bigger the battery we go, the faster charging we get, the better quality everything, the systems that we are in place, the more money it's going to cost. So, our high end by our Energica could start about 24 grand and work their way up to about 30. Zeros are anywhere from probably 16 now to in their mid 20s. At that level, I believe, it's going to be changing the way in the way in which people own those bikes is key versus trying to make them cheaper. For the market that we spoke about earlier, maybe this bike that you have in addition to your combustion bike, that has to be at the right level for you to be able to afford to have both of those things. So what one does one thing, you can quite happily hop on it and do 40 miles down to the shop, poodle about, go out, go to the coast, back in, whatever. But then when you want to go to Scotland or abroad or whatever, you've got your big bike there.
Definitely. Yeah. I think we've pretty much talked exhaustively about all of that, really, haven't we? Truckerjenko, loved watching the vids, Bruce. My question, how long does Alec think it'll take to have a full infrastructure throughout the UK for chargers? Well, what do you mean by a full? You mean as in one that will accommodate I'm assuming he's meaning one that would accommodate like the mass migration across to electric. Yeah. When do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know. I mean, if they're saying 2030, was it 30 or 35 for the cars?
2030, all new cars are going to have to be electric.
Yeah.
So that's not saying that petrol bikes aren't allowed to be petrol cars aren't allowed to be on the road anymore. It's saying no new petrol cars or diesel cars will be allowed. So they just have to be electric.
So you think by that time there's going to be if that is the case, there'll be a significant number of cars on the road that will be electric, and probably a lot of motorcycles as well. Then you think that every service station that they currently have a fuel pump at, you'd have to have a bank of chargers, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It will be really interesting to see how our society, gets their head around the usage side of electric vehicles. I mean, if you take my family as an example, we've got a little electric Mini my mother runs, and for 90%, probably 95% of all the running around that she does, that does it. And it's got 100-mile range, But that's it. That's perfect. They have got another car which they'll use for high days and holidays, for longer jaunts. But that would, and that car is very, very rarely charged at anything other than a home, because it's wherever she's going, she can get there and get back within 100 miles. So so my family's usage of that vehicle doesn't equate into the usage of any of the fast charging points that are being established anywhere. It's only if you've got an electric car, or you only have an electric car, that you do need to go longer journeys that you will need to charge up for. But I don't know. I don't know what the figures are. I mean, there must be a huge proportion of people that never actually would need to use a fast charger. They just work within the range,
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think if most people were honest with themselves, most people fall into that label.
Yeah.
Of course, there's going to be exceptions, and there's going to be times when you need to do miles, but that's when this whole different change in mindset has to come in, where you're going to have to think more about your journey. Like, okay, where am I going to recharge? And hopefully by that point, the infrastructure will be so much more prevalent that it'll be like petrol stations. You in the UK now, you can't go 20, 30 miles without finding a petrol station, can you? So it's already pretty much like that with electric chargers, to be brutally honest with you. They're fucking everywhere. But whereas a petrol station, you turn up and there's two pumps, and it takes every vehicle, let's say on average 4 or 5 minutes to fill up, and then they move on and it's available. It's not like that with electric, is it? So you need a lot more available. Just to drag this on just a tiny bit longer if we can, I thought I was going to find this comment, which I remember reading at some point today. It must have been a comment on YouTube. But this person said they were going down the environmental impact factor, but it wasn't what they did mention about the actual construction, the mining of the minerals for the batteries and generating the electricity, etc. But they said, never mind all that. What about as we develop the infrastructure, and let's just assume that there's going to have to be so many more charging stations out there? Well, we're talking huge amounts of real estate that are going to be, they're going to be converted into effectively parking lots. So that's going to be damaging the environment straight away, isn't it? Because you're going to need so much more physical space to accommodate all these vehicles, all these charging pods.
Yeah.
How do you get around that? Can you get around that? Multi-level? Maybe we could go up with them rather than...
Yeah, I mean, again, there's the element of, if people are moving to electric, maybe the way in which they refuel their vehicle changes, so they realise they don't have to charge out and about. So maybe there isn't the necessity to have the volume of charges that maybe people think we will need because of we have to wait longer. I don't know. That's such a difficult thing to say, isn't it? And then I guess you could argue if there's the decrease in people's need for fuel pumps, do they, instead of having new land acquired for charging stations, is that just reacquired for, is that put over to charging versus fuel pumps? So,
yeah, could you just utilise like brown, what do they call it? Brown earth sites or something? It's the sites that are allegedly like toxic now, in that you can't build residential properties on them. Can that be utilised then instead for these charging bays? I think it all comes down to it's going to have to be. It's a learning process, isn't it? And as you mentioned earlier, it wasn't that long ago that we moved from horse and cart to petrol cars or to motor vehicles. And then you look at the transition from the early motor vehicles to where we are now. It's going to take time, isn't it? We're used to a much faster development and pace of development. And I think with something like this, it's we're not, I don't think we're looking at decades, but we're certainly looking at years to move people across, aren't we? And we're just going to have to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I don't know how if we've got any more questions or anything, but one thing I wanted to say was that the people that followed your trip around the UK, and irrelevant of whether they thought that's electric, that's done for me. I'm not interested in it because of that. Or whether you went, actually, that's really interesting. This is kind of sort of, I'm interested in having a closer look at this, irrelevant of what your opinion is on that, and irrelevant of what your opinion on from an environmental standpoint, and irrelevant of whether you think it's too expensive for you right now or whatever. The one thing I would say, and it's the thing that really made me do what I'm doing now, is just give it a go, just have a go to see what it's like from just the riding perspective, because that's, so many of us ride just because we'd love to ride, and that's why I got into it, because the experience was so good. I didn't, being very honest about it, I didn't give two hoots about the environmental impact of what I was riding and any of the other things that I thought about. It was just right there and then, that moment when I thought, this is awesome. And that's what we really enjoy offering people the experience of. And then you can, you can look into all these different aspects of whether it's right for you, if it's not for you because of what all these different reasons. But just to give it a go, that's the one thing I would recommend.
And if people want to give it a go, how do they go about it? Where's their first port of call?
So you can either drop us a call to the showroom. All our details are online. Book a demo through that. You can book online a booking demo form there. We bring in, although we're a dealership, we're import distributors for Energica, so we have our own network of dealers. So you shouldn't be, pretty much anywhere in the UK, shouldn't be more than 40, 50 miles away from one of our dealers, all the way from Scotland down to the southwest, down to where we are and around London. Just go and have a go. All those guys have demos, and all of those guys are on links from our website to the Energica UK website, and they have all their details. And just go and have a go and see what it's all about. That's what I would recommend. Anyway.
I totally second that, folks. I was, 2018, I wasn't even on my horizon, not interested in the slightest. One ride of the bike has changed my opinion of it. Okay, right, we're done, mate. That's 3 hours, over 3 hours. Thank you so much for coming on. It does fly by. I'm glad you're saying that. Yeah. I'm glad you're saying that. Alec, I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you, mate. I had no idea you'd put your head on the block as much as you did. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to do what I've done. And hopefully there seems to be some positivity out there. It's not all negative. There's some people that it's definitely opened their eyes to it, which is brilliant.
And thank you for letting us be part of it. That's the mate. I think you're the guy that, like I said, put the hours and the miles in, and it's it's that haters going to be haters. You're going to get those keyboard warriors that are going to say they're going to say, and it's going to be difficult to, all of those guys like that were unlikely to ever be, our customers. But for me, it provoked, we started a discussion. We can, and thank you for doing the time to do this. This is the one thing that I really thought was quite important.
Absolutely.
For us to talk through. And also the other important element is I think to next, if you'd like to, give you the opportunity of riding, I think, the Xperia in a completely different way, and just see how that is, how people view that as well.
100%. I think it's important we do that to give us balanced a sort of portfolio of what electric's capable of. It's like it's been tested where it shouldn't be tested, and now we should put it to where it should be, and just see how we go. Yeah, I'm up for that. Yeah, let's have a wee chat later on.
Yeah, we'll sort something out, mate. Awesome. Thank you very much, dude. I'm going to go grab another whiskey.
No worries, dude.
I'll catch up with you soon, yeah?
Absolutely, absolutely. Folks, I'll leave all the links for English Electric down below. All his socials are down there. Hope you've enjoyed this one. Thank you for contributing. Give us your questions. Keep doing your thing. Get on out there whenever you possibly can. Look after those that you love. But most importantly, live your life. Woo-ha! Awesome, dude. Thank you very much for that, mate. I really do.